Welcome back to ICELW 2020. I'm David Goralnik, your conference chair and host for these few days. So thanks again for being with us. And welcome back to the afternoon session on Wednesday, June 10th. It's great to be here. I hope you enjoyed the morning session. We have a great afternoon session coming up. We're starting with an invited talk from Tim Brock of the ROI Institute on, fittingly enough, return on investment or ROI. We've got Larry Bograd on learning and performance, Patricia Behar on mobile learning and pedagogical architectures, Renee Hobbs on a create to learn model, and so much more. So hope you enjoy the next several hours as we're here through the afternoon Eastern time. First, I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking briefly about the use of stories in learning and scenarios. And there's long been a tendency in traditional education to focus on facts and memorizing facts. And that was a way of scaling up when there was first a need for mass education. And in a lot of ways, technology has worsened that. It's easy to get a score. You can ask people to take multiple choice tests and answer multiple choice questions. You'll know if they got 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 or 99 out of 100, and you can score and compare people, and organizations love to be able to do such things. And computers are really good at this, right? Computers are good at remembering facts. They're good at evaluating whether you answer multiple choice question correctly. So that's been the easiest thing to do, and we still see a lot of it. It's the path of least resistance. The paths of least resistance often win out. The path of lowest cost often wins out. But here we are at a different time, as I mentioned this morning. We're at a time of opportunity to reimagine education, to fully popularize the use of methods that are more effective, more enjoyable. And one key tool is the use of stories, particularly concrete, specific experiences that someone's had. You can learn from an expert. You can learn what happened to them, what they did, how they encountered a difficult situation, how they overcame a challenge. Related to stories, the concept of scenarios, using, in this case, a lot of times real life stories that then are scripted. So you have a story that's happened, something that happened to somebody, and and it's not Tim Rocket. You have something that happened to somebody, and that's based on a real life story, and you script and design educational scenes around it, ask people to make complicated decisions, decide what to do in different situations, all kinds of things. And that's one of the things that we're looking to do, to talk about here at this conference. Now, we could hold an entire conference on stories and scenarios alone. And I mean, you never know, we just might do that someday. But for now, what I'm going to do is show a short scenario example. This could be from a course for attorneys in the US. And they can take this for continuing legal education credits, or CLEs. So it's a course that is for credit in that way, but it's also a course that people take for interest and because they think it's interesting and relevant and that it helps them in their jobs. And the course focuses on working as a pro bono attorney, which means you're working for free, and they're usually either big firm attorneys who are working for free as a kind of a once in a while thing, or they're legal aid attorneys who generally work with pro bono clients. So they don't work for free, but they certainly don't get paid the way big firm attorneys do in general. This is a course for pro bono attorneys about how to work with pro bono clients. So someone's coming and getting your services for free. And there's a power dynamic. There are a whole lot of things that get covered in the course. The course was created by Kaleidoscope Learning for the Practicing Law Institute, which is also called PLI, here in New York, and that's the top legal education provider. A lot of the course follows a storyline in video with Ray Richardson, who's a fictitious big firm attorney, and Jane Wilson, who is his pro bono client. And the course participants, as the course goes on, are asked to evaluate Ray's decisions, suggest what he should do next, among other things, at various points in the course. So one thing we're going to do over the next couple of days is periodically check in with Ray and Jane and see how these activities work. These are activities that are done either in a group, in an online course, or sort of in an online course individually, but with a series of people, or done as a self-paced course. We're going to do that though today. We're going to spend some time with Ray and Jane and walk through an activity. So we're going to first today, we're going to see one clip from Ray and Jane. So we're going to see Ray and Jane's initial meeting. So let's take a look at Ray and Jane's initial meeting right now.
Again, Ms. Wilson, I'm Ray Richardson, and I'm the attorney who'll be looking into your case for you.
Thanks so much for seeing me. I'm just so torn up about this. I've barely slept.
Again, Miss Wilson, I'm Ray Richardson, and I'm the attorney who'll be looking into your case for you.
Thanks so much for seeing me. I'm just so torn up about this. I've barely slept since I got the letter. I took a sleeping pill, but that didn't help.
I'm here to help you, Miss Wilson. Now, let's start by being clear about what we're doing. Okay, legal aid has asked me to take on your. Again, Miss Wilson, I'm Ray. Is to understand what happened, answer any questions you may have, and to put together our to-do list for the next meeting. Now, in order to help me do that, I need to understand what you're dealing with. So, can you tell me exactly what happened?
Well, I got this letter, an official document from the court, saying that my husband was divorcing me. I mean, he moved out 3 months ago, but this letter was so final, you know? And I didn't know it was coming. We haven't talked much lately. And the letter itself didn't make much sense to me.
Okay, well, let's talk through the petition. I have a copy right here. I've already read through it, so I'll be happy to walk you through it. Now, here's what your petition says. Your husband wants joint custody of the children and is asking for you to pay him child support.
He wants me to pay him.
I couldn't afford that. He should pay. How will I be able to do this? I don't know what I'll do if I...
It's okay, okay? That's just what he's asking for. It doesn't mean he's going to get what he wants. I'm here to represent your interests, but you do need to know that he's asking for support money from you. Plus, he's asking for you to pay your joint credit card debt.
That too? I really can't afford this. I can't believe he's doing this to me. This is unbelievable.
I know, Miss Wilson. People ask for outlandish things during divorce settlements, but it doesn't mean that it will happen, okay? My job is to try to understand the facts and to best represent you. But I do need you to understand what he's asking for. Now, he's also asking for you to pay the outstanding rent on your apartment and utility bills. But don't worry about that now. Just help me to fully understand the story, okay? People ask for all sorts of things in a divorce. It's just a part of the process.
Rent and utility bills too. He knows I can't afford any of this. He has more money than I do. He should be supporting me. This is so unfair.
Let's talk through the story, and then I can see how we can best respond to this letter, okay? Now, can you tell me about the events that led up to your current situation?
This is all just really hard to think about. But, okay, I know I need to do this. Let me start at the beginning. We met in high school, 10th grade. We sat right next to each other at a football game. I thought he was really funny. We started dating, and everything was fine until sometime last year. I really don't know what happened.
It's okay, Miss Wilson. I know this is difficult. Would you like a tissue?
Thank you.
Just take your time.
Okay, so when I got pregnant with Carly, we had to get married. Well, we knew we wanted to, but maybe not that soon. But we both had to work if we wanted to support a baby.
I understand.
This was junior year. We quit high school after the first semester. Well, really, we quit before final exams the first semester because we knew we had to find jobs anyway, or at least try to. I've done some waitressing, but I haven't been getting a lot of shifts lately. I can barely get by. Rick was always the one bringing in the money for us.
And now he wants me to support him. How does he think I can do that? He knows that's crazy. And he's the one who moved out. He should pay.
I'll do all I can to help you, Miss Wilson. Can you tell me what your husband does for a living?
Well, at the restaurant where I waitress sometimes, they have a lot of private parties. Rick works security during those parties.
So officially he works for the restaurant then?
Yes, just in a different part. He works in a party room in the back. He does okay financially, much better than I do. He always worked a lot of hours. They always need a good security guy. They have a lot of parties. People do sometimes get drunk and out of control.
I understand. And so his income is mostly in cash then?
Exactly. He gets a small salary, but he mostly gets paid in cash. The people who have the parties are always asked to pay him in cash. Plus, he gets a lot of extra tips, especially if he has to break up a fight or something. He likes cash payments. He says that way he doesn't have to pay taxes. More money for us, he used to say.
What about these bills your husband mentions? Are these still outstanding?
We still owe the gas bill. There's no way I can pay for it myself with Rick gone. He always brought in most of the money for us. Plus, when he left, he wrote a couple of bad checks using our joint bank account. So now I owe fees there too. And I can't get my own account. I tried, but since my name is on the account with the bad checks, the other banks don't want me. And he's just running around with all of his cash. And he doesn't give me any money for the children.
Okay, I definitely want to talk to you about the kids in a moment, but let's wrap up these bills first. So you owe the gas bill and bank fees. Do you owe any other bills?
Okay, so we saw Ray and Jane, and we saw them, interacting. And as it turned out, you may or may not caught everything that went on in that scene. As a non-lawyer, I know I certainly didn't, but Ray did some things well, some things maybe a little less well. This was not designed for him to be absolutely perfect, but it was overall a pretty good initial meeting. And so as the course goes on, there's some expert analysis about how Ray did. But there also are other activities that take place. What we're going to do is say goodbye to Ray and Jane for now, and we'll come back to them tomorrow morning and pick up their story. But what I did want to point out is this is realistic, it's dramatic, it's realistic based on real stories. So when our team interviewed subject matter experts, they did not have this particular story. This exact scene did not come up, but this was made from, created from, to make certain points, the kind of stories that happen in real life stories that they did glean from the experts. And so that was kind of how the process worked and generated a realistic and really, really helpful and dramatic video. I think people tend to watch this and feel a little bit moved, and they really want to go after that Rick guy. He didn't even pay his taxes. So you get kind of an emotional response a lot of times when we'll see this. Video scenarios can be expensive to produce, but they don't always have to be, especially these days. Video production is not nearly as expensive as it used to be. Good acting is certainly, always a challenge to find good actors who can do this, and we're really lucky here to have really good actors. But there's always something, and it's well worth it. A lot of times, the return on investment on a video investment can be really high. So the ROI can be really high. And the concept of ROI leads me to our next speaker, who's here as an invited speaker, and that's Tim Brock. Tim is the Director of Consulting Services at the ROI Institute here in the US, which is the leading source of ROI competency building, implementation support, networking, and research. Tim has helped organizations implement the ROI methodology in over 60 countries. He serves on the faculty of the UN System Staff College in Turin, Italy. He's a published author. He's a regular conference speaker, educator, consultant, so many other things. As often is the case, we don't have enough slides to fit all the things and all the qualifications and credentials that Tim has, but here are just a few. And so on that, we're going to go to Tim's talk, Designing E-Learning to Deliver Results. So we're going to roll a little intro, and then we'll turn it over to Tim.
Well, hello, everyone. It's a delight to be here. I'm sitting here with mixed emotions right now. Like I said, I'm looking forward to presenting this to you, but I want to know what happens to Raymond Jane next. I was really enjoying that video. That was good. So thanks again for the invitation to be here with you. I appreciate the opportunity. Please forgive the background. I'm moving offices, and I've had a lot of things moved around behind me, but hopefully the backdrop is not distracting for you. But I want to talk to you about how do you design e-learning to deliver results. And when we're talking about results, we're talking about the reason why you're given money in the first place, because that's what executives want to see. They want to see results. So let us move to what we want to accomplish during this session. Here's the objectives that I have, and I don't want to read them to you, But the whole idea is I want to provide you with a framework that you can use to guide your thinking to design and deliver e-learning, virtual learning programs that the executives will say that this is a worthwhile investment. This is a positive return on what we're looking for the investment, because we want to move from being perceived as a cost to investment. I heard someone say earlier that one of the biggest issues that you have in the industry is you spend all your money in production, but they don't want to spend money on evaluation at the end. We don't have the time or the money for it. Well, the reason for it is they're not seeing anything valuable coming out of the evaluations that they can use so they can make decisions. So we're going to talk about how we can get past that. And I'm going to end up with a case study that you can look at that'll bring everything together for you. So I want to start off here with a question, a very simple question. And that question is this: can virtual learning be as effective as face-to-face? Yes, no. And the answer to this one is maybe so. Hello, went backwards there on me. All right, it's a definite maybe on this. It depends. And what we got to do is we want to move it from no to maybe to an absolute yes. Now, how are we going to go about doing that? That's a big question we want to do. Why does this virtual learning fail for us? Well, there's a couple of reasons that we have. One of those is, and I'm sure you've done this before, is, multitasking. When people are involved in a virtual environment, they're multitasking, they're doing many different things. And a lot of people think, well, I'm really good at multitasking. Well, there's no such thing as multitasking. Multitasking means you're doing a lot of different things poorly. You want to be into single tasking, focus. And that's what we want people to do during our virtual learning, our e-learning environments out there. Another thing is managers don't support it. I've worked with organizations out there. If you're trying to engage in e-learning, you're constantly being interrupted, or you have to do it on your own time. That doesn't help. We don't have success based in on the learning. I mean, what does success look like? Are they going to pass a test? That's not why you were given money to create the e-learning programs that you have out there. They want to see something in return for it. They want to see something positive because they're trying to fix a problem, or they're trying to improve something. Because our programs are not designed to improve the impact measures, those business measures that executives want to see happening. And the other big issue that we have out there is the facilitator is missing. A lot of times we can design programs, we can rely on that facilitator to fill in the gaps. They can look at the eyeballs and see if them glazing over, rolling back of the head, ask different questions, do different scenarios to react. But when we're in the virtual environment, particularly e-learning, it has to rely on sound instructional design as we move forward. So we want to make sure that we're doing this properly. Now, I mentioned earlier that what executives want to see. And we've got a lot of research out there that shows executives are really interested in having data that helps them make decisions to move the business forward. That's what they want to see. They're investing their money in how do we go about improving workforce performance to improve organizational performance. So they're telling us right now that they're not getting that data. They're not getting any information on that. They want to see data that shows the impact that we're having on the business. We ask for a seat at the table. Well, when you have a seat at the table, you got to have something to say, something of value to add. We're not getting a seat at the table because we're not showing our value and what the executives value. As you see right here, for the CEOs report that 74% said they want ROI, but only 4% of them are getting it. It's the most important metric to them because it balances the costs versus the benefits they're getting out of something. And we know that virtual learning, we talk about e-learning, we're talking about, immersive reality and all the different things. That costs a lot of money. But they want to say, what am I getting in return for that? We don't have time for your projects. We have to move the business forward. So this is really important for us to keep in mind as to why is management giving us money for the things that we do? Not for us to have fun and play games on the computer, but they're interested in meeting business goals and objectives. So we have to keep that in mind as we're moving forward. Now, when we're talking about ROI is a simple formula, and the math it's a piece of cake. As a matter of fact, the math is no more difficult than the math that we learned in the 4th grade. Now, I realize the 4th grade was a difficult year for many of us. In my case, both times, but we all made it through, didn't we? So what we got to do is look at this formula. Here's the formula. It's very simple. Benefit cost ratio is just, okay, what's the ratio between the program benefits and the program costs? And the ROI is we take the costs out because we want to know what the return on the investment was. So we take that investment out. So we have the net program benefits divided by the program costs, and we multiply that by 100 to turn it into a percentage. The challenge is getting those numbers that you plug in there. That's where we have the difficulty. So here's just an example of how easy it is. You can see the numbers, how they're doing, the benefits in green, the cost in red. You just do the simple math, and what do you have? Boom, there it is. What the top one is saying is it's a ratio, 1.76 to 1. So it's saying that for every dollar we invest on the right, we get $1.76 back. And down below for the ROI, we take that dollar investment out. That means we get a 76% increase, or 76 cents. So the math for calculating the ROI and the BCR is not difficult. What is the challenge is how do we go about getting those numbers? What we do is I want to share with you what we call a value chain, because that's what we're trying to demonstrate. When we deal with our e-learning products or whatever it is that we're having out there that's dealing with learning in a virtual environment, is we have to show the value, but we have to tell the story. That's what we just looked at with Ray and Jane. You know, story. We got to tell a story here that management will relate to and understand, so that they can remember these things, because they get overwhelmed with facts and data. We want to tell a story, and this is the value chain that we want to tell. The first thing they want to know is, okay, well, what are the costs? You know, and that's what the inputs are. You know, how many people did we train? How much did it cost? What are the hours? You know, all those different types of things that we have. You know, a lot of times we use what we call the BOC method of measuring it. The BOC, you know, butts on chairs, whether it's in the classroom or in a virtual environment, we're just counting people and how much it costs to put them there. And our whole idea is that we always want to be collecting that because executives want to see that it's a cost. But where we really want to make sure that we're engaging folks is at level 1, because we want to know how people react to our course. We want to make sure that whenever they take our learning course out there in the virtual environment, e-learning environment, that they find it's relevant. That's what you see the little asterisk there, that it's relevant, that it's important to them. It's new content. They intend to use it. If they come back and they say, this is really great, this is good, I can really use this, that is a predictive indicator that it's more likely that they're going to apply what they learned on the job, which is what we want them to do, versus if they say, this is dumb, this is stupid, I can't use this, it has nothing to do with my job. That means you're not going to learn, and that means that nothing's going to change in the workplace. So we want to make sure that whenever we design and develop our learning program out there, that we make sure that it is relevant, engaging, important, and the things that you see listed here. And we want to collect that data. We want to collect it. And what we're finding is there's a shift out there. You see in the far right-hand side, our 2020 targets that we just did some research, global benchmarking on, is the emphasis is being shifted a little bit more. So the reaction is easy. The next thing we want to find out is, did they learn? Did they learn what they had to learn to change their workplace behaviors? Do they know the new concepts and trends and facts and the different things that you have listed there? And this is not difficult to measure. And we recommend, measuring this, right now we're looking at about 70% is what the benchmark. Now, where the real struggle comes in, this is where the biggest barrier is application. Does it transfer to the workplace? We want to make sure that they take what they've learned, they demonstrated that they can do it at level 2, and that they will do it at level 1. Are they actually doing it on the job? Has it become a part of their daily practices? Are they using it frequently? Well, that's what we want to find out. Have we changed their behaviors out there? And in this situation, we're looking at, about half the time, executives and organizations are saying, we want to know if we changed workplace behaviors, because that's why they gave us the money. Because what we do next is we go out and we measure those things, and we expect, as a result of them improving those workplace behaviors, that we're going to see an improvement in the business measures. And that's those business measures out there, productivity, time, quality, cost, the different items that you see here. Those are the different things that is caught management's attention, that makes them decide that we want to spend money on a program to be able to improve what's happening in the workplace, to be able to improve these measures. So that's what they're really zeroing in on, is how did your program, your e-learning program, your virtual program, how is it improving those business measures in the organization? And you can see where we're at right now with that. 37% is the target that people are wanting for the impact. Finally, ROI is what a simple calculation. It's the economic. We're looking at benefits and costs. So it's just a matter of calculating some numbers to be able to do that. And that's up to 18% from 5% a few years ago. So executives want levels 4 and level 5 that you see here. That's what they're after. But one of the things that we have to also do before we say, well, here's the impact our program had, is we have to be able to say, well, here's the impact our program had. To answer the question, well, how do you know the impact you're claiming is the result of your program and not something else? Typically in organizations, they have a lot of different programs going on out there that are trying to improve those same business measures. We want to be able to step back and say, okay, this is the impact our program had, and here's how we know. Here's the data that tells us how we know what our program did to improve this measure versus other things out there. And I'll talk to you a little bit about that as we go forward. So this is kind of a macro perspective of the value chain that we're talking about when we're trying to determine, decide, and communicate the value of our program that we developed. Now, anytime you have a program and you're trying to do these things, you have to have a process. And this is why. Deming says if you don't have a process, you can't describe what you're doing as a process, you don't know what you're doing. And he's right. So here's the process that we have developed over the years. And this is the ROI methodology process model. You can see it's broken down into 4 phases: evaluation, planning, data collection, data analysis, and optimization of results, and 12 steps is what we have here. If you follow this process model, you will collect the data along that value chain in a credible way so that you can tell that value chain story. Because what we're looking at is over here is we're defining what the needs are on the left-hand side. Defining what the needs of the organization. What is it that management wants to see improved so that we can improve those business measures? What has to change in the workplace? What do people have to learn to be able to improve their behaviors? And finally, how do we want people to react? How can we create a solution that's feasible? It's the right solution aligned to address those business needs. And then we expect success by planning for results. How do we plan the program in a way so that it matters to the individuals that come to the course? They're going to want to learn it and use it. And how do we make it stick in the workplace? We're dealing with the organizational issues. How can we ensure that the organization is ready to support these individuals when they get back so they can, demonstrate these new behaviors? And then once we've collected that data, then we take the impact data that the executives are interested in. And the first thing we do when we analyze it is we isolate it. We isolate, determine how much impact of this impact measure is due to our program versus something else. And then once we isolate it, then we got to make a decision. We convert it to a monetary value, or do we leave it as an intangible? And if we convert it to a monetary value, how do we do it? And then we want to make sure that we've captured the costs of it so that we can have the denominator of our ROI calculation. We do the calculation. And then notice that the next step, the first step in optimize results, you got to tell the story. We got to tell the story. We got to tell like Ray and Jane in our first preview there. We want to tell a story because that makes sense to people. People can relate to stories. And then the final thing we want to do is optimize results using black box thinking. And that is from the airline industry, where we look at, okay, what went right in our program? What worked, what didn't work, and how can we make things better? How can we improve this program? So this is, a process that we have that we've used, and it's used by over 6,000 organizations around the globe, to include the United Nations and the World Bank, of how they evaluate their programs and ensure that the programs that they're evaluating are aligned to meet organizational needs. Now, anytime you have a process, you have to have guiding principles. And we have 12, as you see right here. I want you just to scan this real quickly. There's a lot of things in here, and you probably don't understand what these are all about. But these are critical to help us ensure that we're consistent in how we apply the ROI methodology in the 12 steps. Let me kind of explain these to you in using a graphic here. This is what we call the chain of impact, also called the value chain. But what we want to do is The first two guiding principles deal with telling the story. We want to tell this chain of impact story. So it says that whenever you're evaluating at the higher levels, you always want to evaluate at the lower levels so you can tell that chain of impact story. People are not going to believe the impact and the ROI if you can't tell them how people reacted to it, what they learned, and if they changed their workplace behaviors. So we got to tell the complete story. But if we're going to the higher levels, we don't have to be as robust in collecting that evaluation data at the lower levels because the focus is on the higher levels. Where we get in trouble is we spend all of our money collecting data at the lower levels. We don't have any money left over at the higher level. You got to collect data that's good enough that's going to satisfy management. And you do that during the planning phase when you're working with them and saying, okay, how much depth do you want to go on these things? Here's what we're able to do. And here's how far we're able to go if you want to do it that level. The other thing that you see here is before we get to the impact level, before we can claim impact, we got to isolate the effect of the impact. So that what we're saying is, when we're telling them here's the impact of our program, we can demonstrate that this is the impact of our program and not other programs. And then, of course, after we've done that, we convert it to a monetary value. We tabulate the fully loaded costs. And by fully loaded, we mean fully loaded. You calculate your ROI, and then you have your intangible benefits down there as well. And you want to use intangibles because what? They have value as well. So these are all important things. So we're creating a chain of impact, kind of like a chain of evidence in a court of law. That's what we're doing here to tell our story. We have a good story when we're dealing with our e-learning programs out, and we want to tell that story in a way that's credible to the executives. So we want to have credible sources, credible data. And that's what the guiding principles help us to do using our methodology. Whenever we're looking at it to create a positive ROI, there's certain things that we want to do, and this comes from design learning and design thinking, I should say. And design thinking is very human-centric, and that's what we're about. We're about improving organizational performance, about improving the performance of people. We're human-centric. You always have to start with the why. And when you start with the why, and you want to ensure that your solution is feasible to the organization, and you want to make sure that you define what success looks like by using program objectives. And when we design our solution, we want to make sure that we're designing for the application for them to use it in the workplace to improve those impact measures. Sampling is a great technique that we can use to collect some data out there to reduce those costs. And we want to use this as a process improvement measure. So let me start off with starting with why. One of the reasons why a lot of our e-learning programs fail is they're not aligned to solve a business need. I've seen a lot of different e-learning programs out there that are really cool, but they don't do anything to solve a business problem. I remember when I was working at a large defense contractor, they were rolling out this communication course at the end of the year. And it was a good communication course. It was generic, but it didn't do anything. It wasn't designed to help us do our jobs better. And I kind of figured out that the reason for it was that somebody needed something for their end of year evaluation. So they created this this e-learning thing on communication skills. It didn't really help much. It didn't do anything. What we want to be doing is we want to be finding out what's causing pain to the executives and what problem do they want to fix so that we can fix that problem and be thought of as an investment versus a cost. What you see here is a business alignment V model. This helps us to align the solution that we're going to create to address learning needs to solve the business needs of the organization. You start off up at the top left-hand side and you ask the question, why? Why has management decided that they want to invest money in a program to address a business need? So first thing is the payoff need is they feel that this is something that's worthwhile doing and they're going to receive a positive payoff on it. They expect to see a greater benefit than the cost. Then we ask the question, well, what are the business measures that you're looking at that tells you that you have this business need? And it usually revolves around dealing with an output of some type, quality. They want to decrease costs. They want to reduce time to get something done. They want to improve satisfaction. They want to improve their brand. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons why they want to do that. We can't design an e-learning course or any type of an instructional course if we don't know what problem they're trying to solve. Well, once we figure out what it is, the business need, what that measure is, then we have to go out into the workplace to figure out what do people have to start doing, stop doing, or doing differently to be able to change their behaviors to improve those business needs. And once we figure out what those are, and whatever it happens to be, if you change a policy, if you change a procedure, if you change an incentive system, if you change something in the workplace, people got to learn about it. So they have to learn what it is that's changed so they know how to change their behaviors. So sometimes what they have to do is if it's, indeed they lack the knowledge and skills to do something, it's going to be a more in-depth learning. It's going to be training. But sometimes it can be just informational. And then once we find out what the performance needs are, that defines what our learning needs are. So we don't have to make up what we're going to put in the course. It comes directly from the workplace to them, and it's going to be relevant to them. And then finally, our preference need is how can we design this course in a way that everybody's going to say, this is great, this is super, this is really going to help me on the job. I really like this. And the organization says, this is what we'll allow you to do. Once we've done that, then we write what success looks like through the eyes of the stakeholders. They tell us what the objectives are that they want to achieve. Notice we're not just talking about learning objectives where we usually live. We're writing objectives for each of the levels. What's the objectives for reaction? How do we want them to react to the course? How do we know that that's good enough, their reaction? The learning, we do that all the time. What do we want to see happening in the workplace when they get done with it? What are the objectives that we want to see happening after they complete the course? And as a result of them changing their behaviors, what improvements do we want to see in the impact measures? And then finally, what kind of ROI do you want to see? Then on the right-hand side, what do we got? Boom, we got how we're going to evaluate it. And evaluation is simply, we're determining how well did we achieve our objectives to address these needs. So once we define the why that you see on the top left, then we get into the feasible solution. We can't create a feasible solution or a learning need or an e-learning product out there unless we know the why first. If we don't know the why, we're making things up in our course content and it's going to fail and it'll be perceived as a cost. It's really important for us to keep in mind. So what we got to do whenever we're coming up with a feasible solution is we just can't go back to the way we've always done things. We got to be very curious in how we approach things. We have to select the right solution. Okay, so we have to be curious and inquisitive as to how can we take all the variables out there that have to come in play to create the right solution moving forward, because we want to make sure that our solution is feasible. Here's some typical diagnostic tools that we use when we go out into the workplace to find out why are things happening out there? Why are things occurring the way they are? So we can identify what the needs are, and we can determine, okay, what has to change in the workplace. And as a result of us changing something, okay, what do people have to learn as a result of what we changed? Our whole goal in what we're doing on the left-hand side of that V model is we're trying to design for results, but we can't design for results if we don't know what the results are that we're designing to. So we want to create a framework that balances the needs of the organization against the feasibility of us being able to implement a solution. We don't want to come up with a solution that the organization's going, we can't afford that. We don't have time for that. So during the planning phase is you're working with all the various stakeholders to determine what their needs are. That's going to get their interest and that's going to get their support. If you're making pain go away from them, they're going to support it, but you want to do it in a feasible way that they can support it. So here we have again is the business alignment V model. It's really critical in helping us to do that as we move forward. Now notice in the middle there, I talked about the objectives, creating what those program objectives are. Here we have examples of the different types of program objectives, for the different levels. Level 1 is we're looking at what's the reaction to the course. Did they think it was a great idea or a dumb idea? And more importantly, do they commit to apply what they're going to learn when they get back in the job? Learning is we want to know how do they demonstrate that they've learned what is necessary to change their behaviors. Application is what behaviors do we want to see occurring in the workplace after they've completed the course? What do we want to see changed? If we don't identify, then how can we measure it? Impact is, okay, well, what improvement do we want to see in those impact measures that management gave us the money to improve in the first place? What are the consequences of those changed behaviors? Answering the so what question that they changed their behaviors. And then finally, the ROI is just a simple calculation of what we got to do. So The reason that we have objectives is we want to be pulling in as many stakeholders we can to support our effort. Another reason why our programs fail is we're in isolation doing our program, and then we put it out there and we don't have management support. Well, you want to get management support, you pull management in to help you define those objectives. And they're going to define objectives and establish those needs that are important to them. Your sponsors, your program owners out there. You want to be bringing everybody in this, and the L little 0, 1, 2, 3 is the levels, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But notice who else you have involved there. You have your analysts, your instructional developers, you have your participants, you have your evaluators, you have your facilitators, you have your designers. Wouldn't it be nice if you were an instructional designer and you were creating a course and you knew exactly what objectives that your program had to achieve in the workplace and in the business measures? Instead of just kind of shooting in the dark and say, well, they met the learning objectives. Okay, so what? They met the learning objectives. That's not what you were given the money to do. The money was given to them to be able to improve workplace behaviors. But you're thinking, well, I don't have any control over that. Well, you're right, you don't. That's why you got to bring in the supervisors and the managers out there to get them involved in this, because you're going to say, I'm going to change their behaviors to do this, and this is how it's going to help you. And they're going to say, if you can do that, I'll support this program. If you can make my life easier and make me look like a better manager because I'm improving things that I'm reporting to management, I'm going to support that. So that's why planning is absolutely critical. That's why we have to have a plan on how we're moving forward. Now, here's objectives that you can see, different rules that we have for objectives. Again, let's involve the subject matter experts and the key stakeholders. Keep it relevant for them. Make sure that you don't overwhelm them with objectives. I've seen programs out there that have 100 objectives. Well, how in the world are you going to manage that? You also want to make sure, like for number 8, your objectives, you are evaluating the program. You're not evaluating individuals. That's the important of those program objectives are related against the effectiveness of the program. Keep that in mind. Don't ever forget that, because that's our swim lane is evaluating the program, not individuals. That's what the supervisors do. Now, here's a little exercise, and I'm just going to spend a minute for you on this, is take a look at these objectives here. These are examples of objectives. And what they do is they represent what you will evaluate with when you're evaluating your program. For the example, for the first one, decrease citizen complaints by 20% in 1 year. That's what we call an impact measure. So if I'm creating a program to deal with citizen complaints, reducing citizen complaints, I know that they won't consider my program successful unless we reduce it in 1 year by 20%. The next one that you see is being able to manage a remote team. That's something that's happening in the workplace. So we want to see after they complete our program on how do you manage a remote team, we want to see them actually doing it. Perceive the information management systems as appropriate. That's a perception. So that's an attitude. So what we have is on this slide is this is an example of how you can use evaluation levels to be able to determine what it is that your program has to achieve at each of the different levels. And if you don't know these, then you're guessing. And that's why we miss the mark a lot of times. And this is why management doesn't care about evaluating our programs. It's because we never give them data that's useful to help them to determine whether the course was effective or not. So the evaluation objectives are really, really important for us to use. Okay, this is another way of looking at that business alignment V model, and you can see what this is. This is for a blended learning solution. Notice how the left-hand side, you're working your way down from level 5, the payoff need. Why did they want to implement this program? They wanted to avoid costs associated with controllable waste and rework. Well, what's their business measures? Reduce controllable waste and rework. Pretty much the same thing. And they want to increase work engagement. Well, guess what they're going to measure at the end when we implement our program? They want to know, did we reduce controllable waste and rework, and has work engagement improved? I'd like to know that if I'm developing the program. Well, then we go out and we do some sniffing around and we figure out, well, what's causing these issues? What's happening in the workplace that people have to start doing, stop doing, or doing differently? Well, there you see listed things that have to happen. Well, now that we know what has to happen in the workplace, now we know the content of our course. Our course has to give people the knowledge and skills and the information necessary so they can change their behaviors in the workplace. If we don't have the level 3 needs data, then how in the world are we coming up with our course content? So that's absolutely critical to do. And then finally, the preference needs down there is how are we going to develop this program according to the preferences of the individuals going through the course? Well, we want to make sure it's relevant, useful, important, and something they find useful and helpful. Now, take a look at the objectives. Look at those objectives. Those objectives are how we're going to evaluate the program. Everybody talks about evaluating to ROI. Yeah, that's true. But we want to be evaluating the lower levels so that we can get to the higher levels. So when we report the impact and the ROI numbers, we have credible data to show here's how we got there. So on the left-hand side, on the right-hand side, all we're doing is we are evaluating how effective the program did in meeting those program objectives at each level. It's as simple as that. And we do all of this during the planning phase. It's not something we make up on the fly as we're going along. We do this during the planning phase. We want to make it stick. That's what we want to do. We want to make sure that what we have designed sticks in the workplace so it improves organizational performance. One of the biggest issues that we found out there, and this is research by Broad and Newstrom, is they said that for successful learning transfer, there's 3 key individuals: the manager, the participant, and the facilitator. And in our situation, it'd be the e-learning course or the instructional designer. And they said there's 3 critical times: before, during, and after the learning event. And what they discovered is the most critical element, the most critical time in person before the event occurs for learning transfer is the manager. And the second most critical person and time for the successful transfer of what was learned is the manager after. So it doesn't matter how well we have designed the course or what we've done with it. If we don't have that manager support before and after, it's going to fail. Our program's going to fail. So this is what we want to do. This is what we want to make sure happens. It's got to be meaningful learning. It's exactly right, Elizabeth. It's got to be meaningful learning. Here are different techniques that we have to collect the data out there at the different levels. Notice that we have certain techniques, methods that we can use to collect data at different levels. During the planning phase, we're sitting down with the different stakeholders and we're saying, okay, this is how we want to collect the data. Will you support this? You know, if you try to use interviews or observations or focus groups, when they're back at the job, and you don't get approval from management ahead of time, expect to get shut down. They're going to say, no, I'm not going to let you take people off the job. We don't have time for that. So you want to get all these things agreed to ahead of time so that when you roll out your program and when you're designing it, you know how you're going to collect the data afterwards. Everything's in agreement ahead of time. All this information that you see right here is helpful for the instructional designer when you're developing your course, if you know how it's going to be evaluated, because you can build that into your course. Of course, some programs that you roll out, like MOOCs, huge. So you use sampling. You can use sampling to determine how well you did. You take a cohort or something, but you want to try to reduce those costs. And then finally, the black box thinking, our last box that we have, is we always want to be, as we're reporting our data, telling people what worked, what didn't work, and what we can do to make it better. If we use this black box thinking of showing how we can improve the program, then that's going to help us to demonstrate our value to the organization and also help us to be able to increase our funding. All right. So let's do now is I want to get into a case study real quick. Okay. I want to get into a quick case study. So let's walk through this. I know we're getting a little close on time, but we got time to do this. So here's the situation. This was a trucking company, and what they were doing is the payoff opportunity says they want to increase revenue for something they had called Profit Pro. And they wanted to upgrade their 12,000 users out there from 1,000 to 3,000. And they wanted to maintain a competitive advantage. Again, executives are making this decision. What was the business need? Well, they said, well, our salespeople have got to do a better job out there with the existing customers. We want them to upgrade sales to be able to achieve this. Great. Okay. Well, what has to change in the workplace? Well, the salespeople have to learn how to demonstrate the new features, how to describe the business case for upgrading, demonstrate how the upgrades will lead to greater profitability, which goes into their pocket, and how they're going to get implementation and support. So what do they got to learn? Well, they got to learn the rationale for the upgrade, what the key features are, and how to upgrade the contribution contributes to client profitability. You got to make it relevant to the client. And then finally, what do we have down here for preference need? It's got to be flexible and the different things that you see at the very bottom. So this is what we're looking at as far as the needs are concerned. Okay. So I see here, calculate R by adding the actual top line revenue attributable to the program. Okay, good. Now, so they decided because they had such a diverse workforce, they came up with a mobile learning solution. They couldn't bring everybody in. They had to keep the sales force out there. So they have 5 modules. They targeted the first 25 sales representatives who signed up for the course. And the content had to be relevant. So they had 5 quiz questions per module. They wanted people to use it immediately. They wanted them to be using it routinely within a month. They wanted sales to occur within 3 weeks. And associates would reach $10,000 in sales per month within 3 months. And then the target was 20%. Well, here's their objectives. This is what they wanted to see happening. You as an instructional designer, would this not help you to know this before you design the course? Absolutely. Here's how they planned the project. So for reaction, what you said here, here's the reaction. This is what they want to see. People found it relevant, useful, helpful, the intent to use. They want to see them rated a 4.0 on a 5.0 scale for the 4 measures. They're going to collect the data through an LMS survey. They're going to get it from the participants, do it at the end of the program, and they defined who's responsible for it. They did the same thing for the learning. Here's what they're going to learn during the course. Here's how we're going to measure it. Here's the method, the instrument that we're going to use. Here's who we're going to collect the data from. See how this is all thought through? Then we go on to the next part. This is where we typically don't do anything. What do we want to see happening on the job after they complete our course? Well, we want to see them using. These are the behaviors that we want to see them using on the job. How are we going to collect the data? Okay. How are we going to measure success? Well, we're going to use a questionnaire, web-based questionnaire, and we're also going to use performance monitoring. We're going to watch them when they don't know we're watching them. Who's it going to come from? Data source, participants, and they're going to use Salesforce for performance monitoring 1 month after the program, and the evaluators responsible. And then what's the business impact? You can see that across the board. And the business impact data is data that they're already collecting. See how that works? So this is all thought through ahead of time, and everybody in the organization spot on to this before you design your course. You as the instructional designer have this to help you do this. Now, how are they going to analyze it? Well, what were the 2? They had the 2 level 4 impact measures, the monthly sales and the time to start, first sales. So they decided they were going to use a control group. First 25 people that signed up, and then they're going to compare them against a control group out there that was equivalent to the group that signed up. And since we're dealing with sales, it's money. So they know what their profit margin is. So that was easy to do. Cost categories you see listed, intangible benefits they think they're going to get as a result of this program, the communication targets that they had, and then finally any other issues. Well, they had to make sure that there was no contamination between the control group and other people out there. Okay, great. So this is their plan. This is what they plan to do. So how did it go? Well, here's their evaluation, level 1 evaluation results afterwards. Their target was 4.0. The average was 4.3. That tells us that, hey, they reacted good to the course. They did better than what we were, shooting for. So that's positive. What happened next? Here's what we're talking about for the scores. Okay, the learning results. Did good. Okay, the target was 20. So we're looking at 20.8. Okay, not bad. Not bad. Go on to the next one. What do we have going on here? Application results. What was our target? 4.0. Look at the measures that we had there, the behaviors we were looking for, and look at the ratings. Not bad. Not bad average overall. See how the objectives are helping us to know if it's good enough or not? And then we come over to the enablers and bears. We collected with them what's helping them to do their job, what's preventing them from doing their job. And then we come over here is what's the impact. So we're able to compare 2 groups, our trial group and our comparison group. Notice the difference in average sales between the 2. So they were able to annualize it because we do ROIs on an annualized basis. And they said they had a 20% profit margin. So they were able to calculate what the profit was, not total sales, but what the profit was. Next, we go into what? We got to know the costs. Well, here's the costs. that they calculated. Now, remember, they're working with finance, with the numbers. Anything dealing with money, you want to be working with finance. You want to have them involved in the planning process up front, getting them involved. You don't do this on your own. So what do? Now they want to calculate the ROI. So we know what the benefits are. They know what the costs are. There's our numbers. And look at that. Look at that. That's what they came up with. And the key thing about this is when they presented this information to the executive board says 311% ROI. Are you kidding me? He looked over to the CFO, and the CFO said, no, those numbers are right. They got it from us. We worked on it together. This is what you want to be doing. This is what you can be doing. This is an e-learning course. This is an e-learning course. You can do this if you have a plan, if you have a methodology to how to go about doing it. That's what we want to do it. Here's some intangible benefits they came up with that they were able to measure. So these are all positive things that have value. So the key thing we're looking at, and I'm bringing this to the close for you all, is these are the things that using the ROI methodology to evaluate your program so the impact and the ROI level helps us. These are the things that they help us to do. And the top one is a very critical one. It's really critical, but we're never going to get there if we don't do the second bullet, align our projects to the business needs. That's where we fall down a lot. We got to make sure that we do that. So we got to be proactive. You know, we got to do this. Things are going to change, and we got to make sure that we have a plan that takes us forward so that we're demonstrating value in what we're doing rather than just, you know, cranking out programs that really look cool and they really look neat. But what value is it adding to the organization? Because when organizations look for places to cut, if they don't see how it's adding value to the organization, particularly in the area of ROI and impact, then that's going to get cut. It's simple. It's very simple. So if you'd like a copy of this case study that I just walked through, you can contact Kathy at roiinstitute.net, and we'll send you a free copy of this case study so you can look at it in more depth to see how this might be something that you could use. Also, if you want to learn a little bit more about the ROI methodology, you can go out to the roiinstituteacademy.com. We have a free membership site out there where you can download a lot of other case studies and templates and a lot of great useful resources out there to help you. If you'd like to get a little bit more in depth, we have a virtual boot camp you can sign up for where, you know, we spend time in each one of the elements of the process model that helps you to understand it, to apply it. And then finally, those of you who are really serious about learning about this, is you can get certified in this through our virtual ROI certification. See, we have distance learning here. You can do it at your own pace in a virtual environment. So with that, what I want to do is I want to thank you for your time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Much. I enjoyed that, and we do have time for questions, so we can check in the chat is probably the best place for questions. So if people want to type out some questions, we can walk through those.
Okay.
And in the meantime, I had one follow-up to ask, just kind of get your view on.
Sure.
When you talk about design, your process overall is very rigorous, right? And that's one of the advantages of it, right? This is a rigorous process. There's a lot of factors to keep in
That's right.
control. Now, at the same time, a lot of really good learning experiences are good because they were designed very creatively. So there's a balance there. So what's your view on how to balance the set of needs of sort of the rigorous business side of things with the creative design processes that you often need to, you know, produce the kind of experiences you really want?
Yeah, that's a great question. And again, that's a balancing act because it depends on what you can get management to buy in on upfront during the planning phase. Because if they're coming back, this is something serious, we don't have time to wait for a lot of the creativity out there. Maybe something else, you're dealing with something with some type of innovative type of things, like you're dealing with virtual reality, mixed reality, immersive learning, whatever it is, you know, those types of things that, you know, that's where they might want to invest to kind of make you a discriminator in the field. But when they're looking at solving an internal organizational problem, you know, they want to get there with the fast, cheap, and you know, under budget type of stuff and have good quality. Good enough to improve those business measures by improving the organizational performance. But if you do something too cheap, people are going to go, wow, well, they just threw that together. You know, they really weren't concerned about me as the learner going through the course. They didn't put a lot of time and attention into it. So that's where you got to find that balance. And the best way to do that is by going out and you're talking to people and also piloting what you're doing. get feedback on formative evaluations as you're moving forward to be able to do that.
Is there any time where you build into some of your models time or budget for experimentation, particularly exactly to try to attack this kind of problem and give people, some level of time and energy and effort and money to be creative without going too far down a path that's going to make it unaffordable for the client? So is that something that comes up for you?
Yeah, no, it does come up. And one of the things we tell them is if you ask management ahead of time, what's the budget that we have? And then you sit down and you take a look at, okay, that goes back to the feasibility issue I brought up earlier. You make the solution feasible. Well, what can we do? Because any additional costs that we add to developing the program is a cost that goes into the ROI calculation, which drives down the ROI. So it's just one of those, it's a judgment call. And if you're working with the organization, you might have very innovative leaders that go, no, let's try it with this. Let's see what we can do with using virtual reality as a part of that, or mixed reality as a part of what we're doing. We'd like to try that, and we're willing to accept a lower ROI as a result of that. But the key thing is having the conversation up front rather than surprising people at the end and go, why did you do that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Client surprises usually don't, there are no good client surprises, right? There may be good birthday surprises. There are no good client surprises.
Right.
No, absolutely. So I guess following up on that a little bit, have you run into times where, it is worth additional time up front because there's the possibility of a better ROI, right? So, if you kind of go the traditional way, there's the budget's $100,000. Okay, we can spend $100,000. We expect to improve performance by X amount. But we kind of have this idea based on what we know so far that we could really improve performance by more than that if we only had more money. Is that something you negotiate, and kind of how do you determine when that's negotiable and when you're kind of going just too far down the path?
Yeah, you want to be as efficient as possible when you're talking to the folks out there, defining these things. But efficiency is a scary thing because, one of the things I'm concerned about is we're really efficient at doing something, but we're shooting at the wrong target and goal. Someone told me a long time ago, one of the greatest tragedies in life is you're busy climbing the ladder of success. And when you get to the top, you discover you were climbing the wrong ladder. And a lot of times, we might be designing an e-learning course that's really cool. We think this is great. We're going, we didn't solve the problem that they gave us the money to solve.
Yeah, no, that can totally happen. We actually had an experience years ago that I had when I went in on a consulting engagement, and the request from the client was for a simulation-based training program for their salespeople. I don't get into too many details to give away who it is, but the short version of the story was we got into about the first meeting and realized pretty quickly the salespeople didn't want anything that was called training. They didn't want to be trained. They didn't need training. They didn't know why anybody who said training was in the room with them, wasting their time when they could be out selling. And so that one, we fortunately were able to talk to the client and reconstruct on the fly. But this had come in as, here's a contract for training. Here's a contract for simulation-based training. And so there was a lot of effort to work through it with everyone to get, okay, well, here's why we don't think this is right for your audience, even though for another audience, this would have been the right solution, and to restructure that. So it's, and it depends obviously on the client, how flexible they can be and how much freedom there is to do things, but totally can happen. So here's another question coming from David Foster, an old colleague of mine, and he writes in the chat, aren't there training contexts that defy credible claims to impact measurement? So, for example, sales productivity is one of the easier ones to measure. In contrast to, say, wellness training, which might require teams of psychologists to measure impact. So are there contexts where you really, it's just impossible to measure what good is, what return is?
Well, yeah, and that it depends upon how much money you're willing to spend. One of the things that we teach is how do you determine whether to leave something is an intangible or convert it to a monetary value? Wellness, okay, fine. Well, could we convert it to a monetary value is the first question. Do we have a unit of measure? Well, wellness is a very vague term. Well, how do we know that the wellness program is working? So we want to take it from a soft measure like that and try to tag it with a hard measure. Well, how do we know wellness is working? Well, we have less absenteeism, maybe. The other one is that we might have an improvement in productivity. So we're looking for tangible measures that tells us that the workforce is healthier. Maybe we have less people less time off to go to the doctor because they don't have less health issues. So we got to define up front what are those indicators that tell us that the wellness program is working. And then we decide if we want to assign a monetary value to it to convert it to on ROI. But sometimes executives will decide that, no, if I know we have this wellness program, it's good for our employees. Example, there's two very large telephone companies out there, I won't mention who they are, and they deal with customer satisfaction scores. One of those companies is they say, no, if we see customer satisfaction scores improve, that tells us that we're going to get additional revenue because it's a positive thing. The other telephone company says, no, we want to convert it to a monetary value. So we want to know how much more money we're making going from a 4.6 to a 4.7, and we're willing to pay for it. So that's a call that management makes of what they're willing to do. So soft measures, we do a lot of work right now with soft measures. As a matter of fact, one of the groups that we're working with is hospital chaplains. Hospital chaplains are now being required to demonstrate the impact that they're having on patient care and adding to the ROI of the organization. Now, who in the world, I mean, chaplains, what do they say each time? Just have faith in us. It's a faith-based program. Not anymore. Well, what we've been doing is we've been doing impact and ROI studies with them, and they have been demonstrating to executives this is how they're affecting patient safety by reducing costs. They're reducing costs by virtue of length of stay. They're with return visits to the hospital out there. They're also dealing with family members, and they're also talking about the benefits they have with ministering to staff members with burnout and turnover. So they're able to quantify the things that they're doing into something that's tangible to executives that they can put a price tag on. They're going, we're going to keep you around.
Oh, so okay. So we're sort of summing up with, you can't always just have faith in chaplains. And I think the other big takeaway was you can't put a price on happiness, but what you can do is measure the results of the effects of happiness and try to measure it that way. So I think
that's exactly right. How do you get more happier?
So I think
what are the tangible things to tell you that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is not just ROI. I think this is a life philosophy buried in there, and we're probably better off if we try not to surface it anymore. But it's really interesting work. I think we are coming down to the end of the time for the question period. So Tim, I want to thank you so much for all of your time and being here, and hopefully you'll be around for rest of the conference, checking in and enjoying some of the other sessions, and maybe being in the chat. So really enjoyed talking about this. This is the ROI Institute obviously is very, very well known, and we're just delighted to have you here. So thanks once again.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Okay.
All right. So coming up next, we're going to have in just 1 second, we are going to have another video interview. So you all met Fernando Salvetti this morning, those of you who were there, and Fernando will be presenting later on in the conference as well. He works for he started a company called eReal, which is a mixed media education simulation company, among other things, and it's almost hard to put into words exactly what his technology does. It's really, really interesting stuff. I spoke with Fernando a little bit about that in an interview, and we're going to show you this right now. So take a look at this interview with Fernando Salvetti, and then we're back live in about 20 minutes. I'm David Gorelnik from the ICELW conference in Kaleidoscope Learning, and I'm here with Fernando Salvetti from eReal. And Fernando is a pioneer in the world of virtual reality and mixed media and so many other related worlds, and has done some fascinating work that's useful in education and beyond in mixing technology with the way that people interact. And I'm just delighted to have Fernando here with me today. So Fernando, if we can start, tell me just a little bit about, and for our audience, just a little bit about your work and your product and what you're doing. We can see a little bit in the background as we speak, but I'd love to hear more about it.
Yes, in my background, you can take a look at eReal, that is an enhanced reality environment, sort of mixed reality or hybrid reality, where people may interact with virtual objects as well as with real human beings in real time, both online, remotely, and face-to-face, interacting thanks to proximity sensors that are enabling the tactile interaction. So we are looking at the big touch screens, as well as with the gaze or with body gesture. So we can enable sometimes the interaction with virtual objects, swiping or using our hands, very far from the wall as well as online. At the same time, we can really touch common walls, level 4, level 5 finished wall, and we can pop up images, avatars, content, 2D, 3D contents to interact with, to learn from, to share, to mainly to co-build knowledge and a common understanding, because at the end we are educators.
Great. Well, this is a fantastic system. Can you tell me a little bit about what the eReal system, how it runs? So how does the whole setup work to run these? So you're running simulations, and you can touch, and you can speak, and you can interact with real and virtual characters. So how does this work, kind of from the standpoint of technology? It's not going to completely run on my laptop, but what do you need to make it run?
It's very easy. A small mid-tower server designed and assembled by us, one or more ultra-short throw projectors when we install within a room, or touch screens when we work remotely, or third option, walls embedded with sensors in order to track fingers and human gestures. So sometimes we put jointly together to work within the same virtual classroom, people from 3 or 4 different locations, because they are co-building the same virtual objects. So is online work, and first of all is a face-to-face setting, like a cave, the computer-assisted virtual environment, but less expensive, and first of all, very easy compared with the traditional cave environments. Because we are educators, not IT guys, we have to keep very simple and user-friendly the experience. So computer, projector, sensor, and a lot of instructional design behind, because this is our job.
Exactly. Okay, so that sounds great. So that sort of the less expensive, the simpler version is primarily projectors, and then the sort of higher end versions you add the walls and the touch sensors.
Yeah.
That come accurate. Great. Can you give us some? I know you've had some examples in the medical field and some others where you've put this simulation idea into practice. Can you give us a story or two about a simulation that you've rolled out, and what it did and how it worked?
Yeah. For instance, in Boston, within the Harvard Center for Medical Simulation, known worldwide as a CMS, Center for Medical Simulation as an acronym, we are performing labor and delivery programs, as well as we are interacting vocally with surgical checklist and mnemonics in order to perform a simulation in a high fidelity environment, where people, learners, are also surrounded by indoor, sometimes outdoor scenarios. So they have to deal with unexpected situations. They have to face unexpected tasks. They have to try to understand what is happening behind their shoulders. And sometimes they have to face very, very challenging situation. And this is an example. Another is in Ashburn, in Virginia, approximately 30 miles from DC downtown, the George Washington University, the School of Nursing. Again, they are immersing nurses and paramedic learners in order to face a mass triage or other very medical relevant situations within a high fidelity simulation environment. In our opinion, very better than the traditional work around the dummy, the plastic, the patient simulator, because enough a patient simulator, alone a patient simulator is not enough. Other samples from Europe, Italy, Germany, Switzerland, not only in the medical field, also in management and leadership development. For instance, we designed a Leadership 5.0 program under the umbrella of the World Economic Forum and on behalf of the Corporate University of Eni, the Italian oil and gas company, in partnership with Aramco from Saudi Arabia and other 3 energy big corporations, in order to deliver, or better, to foster a digital mindset for young leaders, people aged less than 40, in need to perform within a business game, just to learn how to launch cryptocurrency, in order to explore by the flick of their hands infographics made interactive, just to really explore what looks like a car in 2050, or what looks like a plant in 2050, in order to have them really living, let's say, a memorable experience related to fostering their digital mindset outside a traditional classroom. Then we bridge modules using a platform, online learning, and sometimes we deliver in regular classrooms. But in our opinion, immersing people within experiential labs has something that a traditional classroom cannot deliver in the same way.
Can you talk a little bit about the process of designing this kind of system from an educational standpoint, which, as you mentioned before, is absolutely critical. It's one thing to have the technology, and even if it's technology meant for learning by doing, but what are you going to do about it? How do you put people in the right situations so that they learn what they need to be able to do in the right way? So can you talk a little bit about how your processes work and how you look at it from an educational design standpoint?
Yes, need analysis and user centricity as main guidelines means talking to the expected final users, building something like a short movie. So starting by writing a scenario, trying to share with them what makes the difference in between a good performance and something that is an average or below the average level performance, in order to try to reach educational and development targets, keeping the final user at the center of the stage. So from the very beginning, we are used to interview the client. The rule is ask questions 70% of your time, provide info not more than 30% of your time. So we very quickly provide a few sentences in order to allow people to figure out what they are expected to live within a real environment. Then we start asking questions about the average daily life or the specific topics or challenges we are working around. And we design step by step, trying to embed the emotion, try to put the designer within the same shoes or to look through the same glasses, like if the designers were the clients. So our instructional design is mainly performing design thinking approach with a strong user centricity. So it's not so different compared with other design processes.
What's the next, once you've had your initial interviews, when do you get to a point where you show people something, where you show something to a client or an audience, and what is that thing as you're sort of progressing from initial concept, but not quite, not at the point where you're building something for real yet?
At the beginning, we show a story. So we really show something like a written small movie. Then when we are ready to stamp, usually we perform ground zero. So the starting point in terms of performance. And in the middle and at the end of the experience, it depends on the length of the experience, but usually there are two milestones, middle and end. We measure behavioral outputs. So at the end, we, as education or teaching team, are able to track progresses or lack of progresses from the ground zero, the first milestone, the second and final milestone. Usually we provide people one by one with a very direct feedback about what they performed. And we provide the client only with a short summary. The client is the company or the organization behind, because there is privacy, because our policy is a closed door policy within an area lab, as well as within a regular training classroom. So people know that with us they can perform freely in order to really hone their own skill and competencies, in order to reach their own results as individual people or persons, better, or as a team, or and, because, for instance, in Boston, sometimes we have a single person performing dialogically with an avatar that is talking from a wall. Other times, the avatar is talking from a screen. It is purely e-learning. In our case, it's more interactive because we design all our content using Unity as a graphic engine, and our effort is making a really highly interactive all the content, both delivered online or face-to-face within a real immersive environment. So at the end, and at least, people may really measure ground zero and further milestones reached in terms of performance, behavioral competencies, technical competencies, all joined, all related, because the effort is recreating a high fidelity environment. And in the real world, we do not perform the so-called soft skills and the so-called technical skills. We perform highly sophisticated behaviors, professional behaviors. We try to take screenshots and photographs about real behaviors that have different and several components: technical, behavioral, cognitive, metacognitive. And we try to provide feedback, enabling people to understand all those aspects that are from the same performance, stage by stage, from grade zero to the end of the real experience. For the commitment, for the client, for the corporations, the organization we are working with, we provide only short, very short summaries with the average trend of the teams that perform, not about individual people, because we are trainers and educators, and mainly in Western Europe, has to be guaranteed privacy. Sometimes in the US or in other countries, there is a melt in between training and evaluation. Usually it's not the same in Western Europe.
Anything you kind of want to leave us with in terms of the way that you see technology impacting society and education, looking forward, where we might want to see things going in the next few years, as now you can build these fantastic things in a room. What else do you see kind of moving forward, and maybe just a couple minutes on where you see this, where you see things going?
First of all, I'm a philosopher and a lawyer and not an engineer. So I'm not an expert about technology. I'm just performing as a system integrator. What we are foresee, and we means our extended team, 25 people behind the real, is the Internet of Everything. So it's a common trend within the so-called 4.0 society. In our educational setting means embedding sensors within different things, having sensorized objects, as well as having sensorized people wearing special clothes embedded with sensors, people wearing special helmets embedded with sensors. And this means in the next 5-10 years, the high chance, let's say, to measure, or at least to track, gaze, eyes, bodies, human interaction, human positioning around a physical setting, situation, challenging task in a way that we are not used to do within a traditional educational setting. If you think yourself as a trainer within a traditional learning setting, your attention is mainly focused on people, mainly on the verbal performance, sometimes the facial, not verbal performance, a few times the physical setting, where people are positioning themselves, furniture inside, obstacle inside, and so on. Because our cognitive resources are limited. With the Internet of Everything, we are expected to be able to track environments and people. So we are expected to perform pretty easily network analysis, having a deeper or at least a better understanding about how people are positioning themselves. Think teamwork. How I'm positioning myself physically with the other 2, 3, 4 teammates. How we are positioning ourselves with the patient if we are talking of a healthcare simulation. This is a trend we are foreseeing. Then let's wait and see. Who knows?
Right. No, you never know, but it sounds very, very promising, and both in terms of understanding interactions with people and understanding interactions with objects and smart objects that are part of the Internet of Things. So there's just so much that we can do as we continue to reimagine the world of education and bring about change. And it's really just the time to do it. And really pleased to see where you were going and where your work is going and headed. And it's really, really interesting work to discuss. Fernando, it's been a pleasure speaking to you as always. It's been Fernando Salvetti from ICELW in Italy and numerous other countries, really around the world. I think, what are you in 80 countries? Is that actually the right number? 83 countries around the world. And it's really interesting technology. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. Thanks once again, Fernando.
My pleasure, David. Thank you so much for the time you devoted me. All the best.
All right, welcome back. And it's good to be back live. Hope you enjoyed hearing a little bit more from Fernando and seeing his phenomenally fascinating interview background. And so if you're at home and have a big screen to put that on, it's probably dizzying, but it's probably well worth it. I do not. I'm watching on a small laptop. So we are now up to another live talk. So coming up next, we have Larry Bograd, who is going to talk with us about the performance learning continuum. We've talked a lot about training, and we're now going to talk about a little bit more directly about performance, and that conversation has already started in the chat, I see, with Hal Christensen and Tim Brock. So we're gonna roll Larry's intro and then turn it over to Larry. Okay, see the slides up and ready to go. So I think waiting to hear Larry. Just waiting just a second. He's going to get his camera and microphone turned back on, and we'll be ready to go. So we talk about the performance learning continuum. Learning is not a one-time thing, and that you're reading the chat that came up a little bit in, as I was mentioning before, Hal Christensen's conversation with Tim about where performance support fits in, where we have just-in-time performance support as a way to alleviate the need for training, often in the place of unnecessary training. If you look at performance as the goal first, behavior change is the goal, performance is the goal. Training is one way to get there. It is certainly not the only way to get there, and it isn't always the best way to get there. And if there is if training is the initial way to solve a problem, then there may be other things you want to do down the line to reinforce with just-in-time performance support, reinforce with some kind of just-in-time training, just-in-time learning, something else that you might want to provide to people to make sure that they continue to remember how to perform the skills that they need to perform even after a training event has concluded. So I think that's kind of one of the key takeaways from Hal and Tim's discussion in the chat, and something that we can continue to go on. All right. So meanwhile, I'm still waiting for Larry to get going, and it should be just another second, and if not, we'll find some more Ray and Jane clips. I actually have to save those for tomorrow. Everybody's excited about Ray and Jane. We have Ray and Jane planned to come back as a group activity tomorrow morning. So for those of you who saw the opening in the afternoon, we spent a little time with Ray Richardson, a fictitious lawyer, and Jane Wilson, his equally fictitious client, as we watched Ray work as a pro bono attorney and saw Jane's sort of heart-wrenching, difficult scenario. And we're going to pick that up again tomorrow. All right. So I think do I hear Larry chiming in? And there we go. All right. Well, on that note, I will retire back to the background, and I'm going to turn it over to Larry. It's great to have you here to talk about performance learning.
Thank you. Thanks for your patience, everybody. David, I had to make a change to my browser. Welcome. I'd like to basically introduce myself very quickly. I've been in the educational field for almost 30 years, 10 years as a college professor, and 20 plus years in the training industry, primarily as a instructional designer, creative designer, director, what else? Instructional designer on all levels. Can I go ahead and get to the first polling question? Is that me here in the chat?
Yeah, it's hidden for the moment, so our staff can put that up and there it is, right there. Look at that. Like magic. Polls, if you click on polls, you should see it. Select the focus of your learning interest is up now. And that's true for the audience too. If there was not a polls tab next to chat, but there is now a polls option now that we have a poll up. So next to chat, you should see polls, and you should be able to answer the question, select the focus of your learning interest. And we are saying, we encourage you to vote always and now, but always, especially now. And please go ahead and do so. We're seeing the answers coming in.
Okay. Thank you all. Yeah, that's very interesting, because one of the things about the learning continuum that I find intriguing is the disconnect between academic and educational learning, acceptance of learning continuum, and the corporate world is still kind of scratching its head saying, well, I don't understand this. If we give a person a course, then they should be fine, right? Sort of in a sort of caustic way. This is often called the spray and pray approach, where if you give somebody an opportunity, then, year from now, 6 years from now, they should still be doing it. Can I have the second poll question? We're basically in the academic world, there's 100 level, 200 level, 300 level, things of that nature. Waiting for the other polls just to come in here.
I see, what is your familiarity with the concept of a learning continuum? That's popped up above and push the second one below. And we do see answers coming in. So we have.
Yeah, so it seems like a majority of people are relatively new to the concept. Hopefully you'll learn something in the next 20 minutes or so. Now I have the third polling question.
Seems to be taking, this one is taking a minute to post, what I see. All right, seems to have been cut off. I think can you do this one? Can you do this one just by speaking? It seems to just not be, it seems to be cutting off. So there's a little technical issue. You just ask the question, and we'll ask people to answer in the chat and do the best we can with that one.
Yeah, I mean, we could probably go without it. So let me just go ahead and talk a bit more about my presentation. it's very interesting that people sort of forget how we mastered skills and learned knowledge. For example, short of those of us who were just thrown in the pool and told to swim, most of us advanced through various swimming lessons from beginners to intermediate. Sometimes we had some coaching, things of that nature. Same with a musical instrument. If you think about how you learn to play music, yeah, there's the stories of people who pick up an instrument and immediately can play it, but more typically, and usually it's a parental decision, we either pick up an instrument or are told to pick up an instrument, and if we're lucky, we get lessons and potentially play with a group and sort of do the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours until we get to master it. And same with riding a bike. I would think very few people could jump on a bike at age 3, 5, 6 and just start cruising. No, I mean, typically you start with training wheels, or you start with an adult helping you to keep balance behind you and things of that nature. So in a rough way, this is what the learning continuum is. It's basically acknowledging that nobody really can master anything with a one event learning opportunity. So this is sort of how I view the learning continuum, and a lot of other people obviously view the learning continuum. And basically, it starts with what's needed for effective learning. And as I just talked about, and we'll focus a bit more after this slide, most people would say that effective learning is dependent on repeated exposure and experiences, okay, that result in embedded memory. And then what's required for embedded learning? This is sort of an instructional design issue in the sense that the learning must be practical, relevant, and delivered with a psychological content. Why do I say psychological content? And David, you touched upon this a little bit when you talked about scenarios as an effective way of learning. But basically, if I was to ask any of you, let's say, what phone number did you call earlier this morning? Chances are that you probably won't remember. But if I ask you to recall the phone number when you were a young kid in your house, chances are you may remember it. Or for instance, for those of you that listen to music regularly, I might ask you to recite the lyrics of a current song of yours. And chances are you probably won't be very verbatim in terms of it. But on the other hand, if I ask you to think about a song you learned as a kid or at camp, maybe one that you associate in some way with your youth or adolescence, and ask you to do the lyrics, you'll get a lot further in understanding the lyrics. And we'll talk about, from a neuroscience point of view, why this is important. So as an instructional designer, I always try to integrate some kind of dramatic scenario, because we tend to identify with characters. And if we identify with characters, the chances are we'll have some emotional feeling. Just as I think Trevor said, I want to see the outcome of that video with the lawyer. So, and then for those of us in organizations, a lot of times, we need leadership to commit to a performance learning continuum, because there's a lot of other parts besides just offering learning opportunities. There's this commitment, which will also require communicating that commitment. It will require extra budgets, because we're going to have various levels of learning over time. Marketing, I'm a big believer that not enough organizations do the kind of marketing before learning events start, in the same way that, if you go to when we used to go to the movies, remember that, there would be a coming attraction. And so a lot of commercial businesses will always do something similar to that. They'll do a marketing campaign, they'll do a launch, They'll do reminders. I mean, we're all used to sort of seeing this stuff in our email. And then how should learning occur over time? Well, again, training is only one part of learning. It certainly should be spaced over time, and we'll talk about the forgetting curve next. But it should also be delivered in different ways, and we'll talk about that in a second too. But I think what also happens, particularly in the corporate world, is that people end up relying, let's say, on e-learning or micro-learning or self-guided learning, like, step action tables, things of that nature. And to me, it's more effective learning if we go about things in different ways and offer people different ways of learning, because there's different types of learners. And finally, again, I see this because I've also often worked for training companies that have third-party courses that they sell, that a lot of these libraries are, an inch deep, and of course they're an inch deep, but they're not wide. They're not a mile wide, and they're a mile wide. Sorry, forgot my little slogan there. In the sense that they often don't go beyond the foundation learning, the overview learning. So again, I think when you start thinking about a learning continuum, you do want to have a progression, just like you do with a skill that we talked about earlier, whether it's swimming, learning an instrument, where you clearly start at a beginner's level, but you get more refined as you move up. And obviously college does this pretty well, where you start with a 100 level course and you move your way up to a 400 level course. And then if you want to continue, you go on to graduate school, things of that nature. So one of the reasons the learning continuum is really important is because of what's been around since the 1885, the Eppinghaus forgetting curve. And think about this. I mean, let's say you're going to the grocery store and you give yourself a verbal list. And maybe there's 12 things on your list. And, all the time that you're either driving or walking to the store, you're going through that list of 12. And you're doing a pretty good job refreshing yourself. What do you want to buy? Well, how many of us have had the experience that when you leave the store, if you're fortunate, by the time you're not too far from the store, you go, oh, I forgot these two things. Or when you get home, you go, I need to go back to the store. I think from a neuroscience point of view, it's pretty clear that most of us can only really retain about 5 to 7 items at one time, whether it's information or knowledge and things like that. And then obviously, over time, we tend to forget the specificities. And so there's been various studies done in terms of how the brain deals with retaining memory or fails to retain memory. And again, from a learning continuum point of view, space learning is definitely one of these ways that people are going to learn better. And also, as I'm going to talk about in a second here, a lot of this is neuroscience. So a lot of us are familiar with Bloom's. It's been hammered into those of us who work in the learning space. But to me, a lot of times there's not a connection with Bloom and the brain. Now, obviously, for those of you that aren't familiar with Bloom, it's a taxonomy of learning where you start with very basic things like identify, explain, and then work to more and more high-level cognitive thinking, like create, analyze, problem solve, things of that nature. But as you can see from the diagram of the brain, each of these knowledge tends to embed itself primarily in one section of the brain rather than all of the brain. So one reason that any kind of training or learning that's involved that has an emotional resonance or a psychological resonance is going to go in the that tiny little part of the brain that sometimes is called the limbic region, that basically also sometimes referred to as the reptilian version, which basically means, it's the most primal part of our brain. It's the one that where we have fight and flight and where we sort of respond to things on an emotional level. It's one reason why trauma is ongoing and is often very difficult to alleviate, in the sense that trauma, almost without exception, at least to my way of thinking, has a strong emotional component. You know, we can, if we think about our own trauma, we could come up with how we felt, what we saw, what we heard, what kind of reactions other people did, what we did, and you know, all that stuff is in a very small but very powerful part of the brain. The hippocampus tends to do more with memory. It may be where we know where we can store things like a family tree or multiplication tables or the list of presidents, things of that nature. And the neocortex is where, to my way of thinking, too much of training and learning takes place, which is really the short-term memory, you know, the thinking part of the brain, but not necessarily the retaining and memory part of the brain. I think the other thing that I touched on earlier is the thought of multiple intelligence. You know, this is based primarily on the work of Harvard professor Howard Gardner. He wrote a book in 1983 called Frames of Mind. And I think he started with 8 different ways of learning, and now he's up to like 12, as this slide shows. But basically, you know, he came upon, as a lot of researchers do, the sort of obvious point that different people learn different ways. You know, some of us learn reading, some of us learn by watching video, some of us retain things, you know, through our senses. Some things we learn through body memory. In other words, you know, if I want to be a good basketball player, then I have to shoot a lot of hoops. You know, I can read about it, I can hear about it, I can watch great basketball players, but I need to have that muscle memory to get better at it. And the arts, of course, things like this. So again, I find too much course development and learning plans and things of this nature depend on 1 or 2 of these intelligences, instead of realizing that different people learn different ways. And therefore, over the continuum, you know, it's good to maybe present or entice learners with slightly different emphasis on which intelligence we're talking about. I'm humming along here. Let's see what's next. Yeah, so, you know, another thing that's become of late, I mean, it's not really of late, it's probably been around for 20, 30 years, but it's experiential learning. I have 3 daughters, and they went to an experiential learning grade school, somewhat based on Outward Bound, which is basically saying that, you know, we can teach you in the classroom, but you're going to learn more and apply more and remember more if we take you out into the world. So I had a 7-year-old daughter who was building a snow cave in the middle of the Colorado winter where we live, and, you know, or rafting down the Colorado River as a way to experience nature, as a way to see the kind of plants and animals that one might see, learn about the weather, learn about what happens to the human body under certain different conditions, things of that nature. To this date, I haven't built a snow cave. I'd probably have to ask my daughter if she remembers how to do it. But again, this is this whole thing that I think is part of the learning continuum, is understanding the fact that, you know, and you also will see the notion of this is that you know, it doesn't stop. As we get more information, as we start thinking things in maybe deeper ways, we repeat this cycle. So again, I think when it comes to learning continuum, often what's left out is this kind of experiential learning. Now, I think as our previous video showed, that with the acceptance, more wider acceptance of VR, AR, for instance, or on-the-job training, which has been around for a long time, this takes care of part of that learning, but there's still things where people have to practice, they have to experiment, hopefully in a safe environment and things of that nature, and they have to try it. One reason we have training is because we want people to be able to try new skills, practice new skills, try them and practice them in a safe environment. Like for instance, surgery. I would hope that my surgeon spent lots of time working with cadavers, working with simulations, all kinds of things like that, rather than observing, assisting, rather than just saying, well, I'm going to try out my brain surgery skills today. And another thing that's happening is there's been a lot of thought to what's called the performance support infrastructure. It's been around for more than 40 years, but again, to some people, it's relatively new. And as you can see, if you go along the line, you have the continuum of the infrastructure, which are learning support tools or systems that are ongoing. In other words, we allow people to learn on their own. We allow people to learn through peers. We have a whole structure in place that is beyond just the coursework. But basically, that there's a period of training, and then there's a period of transfer of those skills and knowledge to a competency level. And then, of course, the real key is sustaining this over time. So since we have limited time, I'm going to go ahead and just show you an example. Or three examples, rather. So for instance, in the first example, it's kind of like learning continuum light. We would have some marketing, get people excited about what's going to happen. And then we would obviously give them some foundational level, and then some reinforcement, maybe 30 days out, 60 days out, a year out, and not just tell them to take the course over again. I do a lot of work in the compliance space, and when you look at the evaluations of some of these learners, they go, why did I have to take the course that I took last year and the year before? So again, if you're going to, if there are required compliance courses, but if you changed it up every year or so, I think you'd have much better ROI, you'd have much better performance and retention. And then, the second and third example get a bit more sophisticated in their learning continuum. But again, hopefully you at least see that there's spaced learning and that there's different ways of presenting and encouraging people to do that. So as I wrap up here, please take a look at the slide. I'll highlight it very quickly, but each method and each part of the continuum depends on learning processes, multiple methods presented in different contexts, and we try what we can to make sure that not only are people exposed and learn, but they can practice these skills or apply these skills with a level of confidence. And having that level of confidence will allow them to build more specialty over time. So I think I have about 10 minutes left here, David, for questions, if you have any.
We have 5 minutes left now for questions. If you want to put questions in the chat, we can cover them. And in the meantime, as we're waiting, maybe if you could speak a little bit more. We covered a lot of different concepts, and I agree with you completely. Some of these have been around for a long time and are only now getting more appreciated, particularly experiential learning and performance support. Can you talk a little bit more maybe about where you see performance support fitting in, complementing training, and in some cases obviating the need for training entirely, as how I was talking before. So let's talk a little bit about performance support.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think it is changing to where there's a lot more emphasis. As I said earlier, a lot of times customers, clients, they'll say, again, if I can use the compliance world as an example, we have to train everybody on harassment. So, take this course in for an hour, and next year you're going to take the same course for an hour. But, that's very different than providing people resources. Not only, for example, sometimes you can create little 30-second videos that might be a scenario followed by rhetorical questions, get people thinking about it. You can create infographics, you can create you can direct people to blogs, you can direct them to PDFs. So there's a lot of different, what you can do, discussions in a box, where sometimes I'll do like, you write a quick leaders facilitator guide for a manager who, let's say, is in a factory to just run, when they have their morning safety meeting, let's say, that they can take 5-10 minutes and keep the issue of preventing and recognizing harassment in front of people. So I think there's a lot more of that. I think the learning management systems are a lot more sophisticated now in order to support these different learning performance aids. You can load them all as separate assets and either assign or open them up to learners, things of that nature.
No, and I think you mentioned compliance training, which it's great to see better compliance training. One of the challenges I think with compliance training is often the goal of the training for an organization is simply to comply, right? So they want, they aren't really trying to address potential behaviors or head them off. They're really simply trying, okay, we have this legal requirement, and so you do something very silly and take a test, and there's even less incentive than sometimes there would otherwise be to do something good. So it's great to hear that you've had some opportunities there. Do you have a question from the chat?
Yeah, if I may just quickly respond to you there, David. I think they're not, like in my work with compliance companies, there's been a big sea change, because initially compliance training, to your point, was basically to mitigate liability on the employer side or the organization side. Now I think, and the events of the last couple of weeks should let us realize that a lot of this needs to be aspirational. It needs to say, we want to create a civil and respectful society, workplace, because these are the benefits and these are some of the hurt and harm that it mitigates. So I think there's been a big change in that, though I think there's still a lot of compliance companies that are just churning out the regulations.
No, I'm sure. And yeah, I mean, it's at least nice that things that are the right thing to do for so many reasons are in alignment with the business goals, and it really shouldn't have to come to that, but at least it's better than the alternative, which we've seen where there hasn't been the interest. One last question before we wrap up. There's a question from the chat asking if you studied John Medina. Is this someone who you've run across before?
It's not familiar to me, but that person can share. Or if
yeah,
you know
no, it's not someone I know either. Elizabeth Barber is raising the chat. Elizabeth, in the next 30 seconds, if you can get back to your keyboard and want to tell us more, feel free. And if not, we can certainly pick it up later or during Elizabeth's own talk later on in the program. So great. So I think it probably just leads us to the time to. Okay, he's a neuroscientist on brain cognition, relevant to what you're speaking about. So someone to look up. So thanks so much for that recommendation and to us and to.
I'll have to add him to my
slide. I mean, I don't know if that always has to be the first thing. That's a very 2020 thing to do. Like, here's someone new, I'll put in my slide deck. Well, hopefully we'll read it, we'll like it, we'll see him speak, and we'll see some value in it and integrate it. So thanks for sending it on. All right, Larry, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Great to have you here. Hopefully you'll stick around for the rest of the conference. We'll see you in the chat.
Terrific. Thank you very much, David.
All right. So next up, talks fast and furious coming this afternoon. And next up, we're going to have Patricia Bihar from Porto Alegre, Brazil, who I've known for a number of years and is doing all sorts of interesting work at her university. And it's very technical work that's very usable and really contributes directly to great learning experiences. And she's going to talk about the development of digital fluency through M-learning. And I think we can go ahead and roll Patricia's intro, and then we'll turn it over to Patricia.
Hello.
Hello, everybody. Does everybody listen me? Yes?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. It's a pleasure to be today with everybody. It's online. Okay, I'm participate for the last years for this wonderful conference. And well, I'm from Brazil, Porto Alegre, Rio Grande do Sul, and I'm going to present one of the works of a master degree of my student about pedagogical architecture, the development of digital fluency through e-learning. The aim of the research it's to construction a pedagogical architecture that I'm going to explain after for assist teachers and students in the development of the digital fluency through e-learning. In Brazil, households, smartphone types, mobile phones appear in the first position, I think, in all the world as the most used way to access the internet, like 92%, followed by the laptop, notebooks, 29%, and the tablets for 16%. In this way, we understand that the computer is not the main technological resource. Then the portable devices such as tablets, tables, and smartphones have the preference among the population. We are working now in this situation and the pandemic with students and teachers with a lot of cell phones in the schools. And what is m-learning? The m-learning it can occur at any time and place with teacher guidance and use of the mobile device. One of the factors that make the population prefer mobile device in the fact that these devices are small, making their transportation easier, and they have all the technological resource present on computers. Currently, the tablets and smartphones have as many tools and features as a computer, as well as internet access, but they have the advantage of being lighter and easier to carry around. Thus, education can benefit from using online tools and technological resources accessible in the population of mobile devices and not only computers. We understand that with the integration of ACT in education, there were changes mainly in distance education in relation to communication and interaction. We consider that mobile devices have features that allow teachers and students on distance learning to research new possibilities and use them in teaching and learning as a way to expand communication, interaction, and information sharing. Here in Brazil, we have a lot of students that they don't have a computer at house. This is our situation here in Brazil, and this is the reason that the public universities and we didn't begin the semester. We normally begin in March, and the public university studying ways to begin the semester in this situation because these students, they have smartphone and tablets, but they don't have computers at home. And this is one of the reasons that they are studying how we can begin the classes in this bad situation with only a cell phone. the role of ICTs is to contribute to reduce this pedagogical distance, ensuring forms of communication, interaction between the actors involved in the process of knowledge building in distance education. Thus, the teaching and learning plan and organized by the teacher may reduce the distance between the subjects involved. It's students, monitors, tutors, or professors. The activities carried out in distance education should be planned in order to promote knowledge building, and the use of mobile device may contribute with it. However, it should be clear that using this means alone does not guarantee effective and innovation in the learning process. Therefore, we are working about how we can construct a pedagogical architecture in a distance learning discipline subject can enhance the combination of the use of this technology with the pedagogical proposal of the course. For us, this is this feature. We can show what is a pedagogical architecture. The pedagogical architecture for us is support for 4 elements that make up its structure, namely, the first one is the organizational aspects, the second one is the content, the third is the methodological aspects, and the fourth is the technological aspects. In this sense, the teachers can use these elements of the pedagogical architecture to plan their teaching activities involving M-learning. According to UNESCO, M-learning enables and facilitates communication, interaction, and networking anywhere and anytime. Thus, we understand the importance of the competence of that students and teacher can have greater availability and accessibility in distance learning through mobile device. The pedagogical architecture in this, in our present study was created for an undergraduate course for a public university in the state of Rio Grande do Sul, Brazil. In my university, in my course. This way, the pedagogical architecture seeks to contribute to students through the presentation of possibilities of using mobile device as mediators in the teaching and learning process in distance education. We try to minimize the distance between the actors and the educational process, making learning more contextualized. The pedagogical architecture consists in these 4 aspects. The organization aspect is they are related to planning, organization, the time and the space, pedagogical expectations and proposal, objective, actors, target audience, and teaching. The content, of course, is what we are going to teach, are related to teaching material, resource, study activities. The methodological aspects are the forms of communication and interaction and the evaluation procedures. How I can evaluate the process of the construction of the knowledge of our students. And the technological aspects, we choose a virtual learning environment in this aspect and the hypermedia tools. Okay. This slide, it's about what we understand that competence, what we want to teach and to construct in our study. We want to construct the competency of the digital fluency focus in M-learning. that we understand what is a competency. I know that in US, sometimes we mix skills and competence, but here in Brazil, we understand that the competencies are formed by a set of composite of knowledge, skills, and attitudes, which make for us the acronyms CHA. And we use Perrenot. Perrenot is our one of the authors that we use in our studies, that he defines the knowledge as the subject knowledge that is related to the contents that will be addressed by the teacher. The skills are considered as the subject's actions using this knowledge, and according to Moreto, that's another author that we use, they are related to practical activities, such as knowing how to carry out an action. And the last one is the attitudes, that we understand that the mental model of the subject, his values and beliefs, that the competency elements must help to solve a new problem or a new situation in different time and context. In this case, new situation may be linked to the digital fluency competence for learning to overcome challenges with the use of mobile device. The digital fluency competence for this distance learning is seen in this work as the use of technology related to the creation and development of education material, such as application, and also the development of activities. In addition, subjects may improve them through their life and as the needs arise as ICT progresses. In this context, we consider it important to develop a specific competence focused on the use of mobile device. That is why we propose in this study the competence of digital fluency focus in learning. We understood as the use of mobile device with emphasis of the creation of didactic pedagogical materials. The identification of knowledge, skills, and attitudes assists in the development of the digital fluency competence focusing on learning in distance education. In this table, we show the knowledge, skills, and attitudes that we elaborate for this discipline that was 100% distance with no in-person class, and composed by the student from undergraduate course in different areas. What was the methodology? We work in a quality case study approach. The case study made the implementation of this pedagogical architecture to distance education possible, with the aim to assist the development of this digital fluency through use mobile on a specific application. We have an audience of 30 undergraduate students of different scores. They are from mathematics, education, statistics, geography, different courses from a Brazilian public university, and the age between 19 and 40 years old. The data was performed, of course, the last semester of that last year. We call in a semi-presential an elective discipline, because they have in the end a test. And we planned 3 proximate meetings and 12 in a distance education. distance. The course was conducted in a distance learning manner with these activities mediated through a virtual learning environment that we use in this university that we call RODA. We use a participant observation and a questionnaire with open and closed questions. The data allowed the analysis of the pedagogical architecture according of the following categories. The four aspects: the organization, the content, the technological aspect, the methodology aspect, and the strategies that was used at the application of this architecture. Well, I'm going to present the analysis and results of this implementation. After the implementation of this pedagogical architecture, we development of the distance learning disciplines focus in the use of mobile device, and we verified the necessary of the three components of the competence: the knowledge, the abilities, the skills, and the attitudes. And I don't know if you are going to see, but this I think you are not able to see everything, but we organize it in CMAP tools tool, the pedagogical architecture, to explain what we have to do and what we have to construct in the four different aspects in this architecture. I'm going to explain one per one. The first one, it's the digital fluency competence. The first is the knowledge, know how to use the mobile device and the apps for education purpose, know how to create apps, and improve knowledge about M-learning. The skills are use mobile device and apps, innovate and create using mobile device in the classroom, and the attitudes was to construct the autonomy of the students, reflective, the researcher, the proactive, and the ethical stance. And the next one, I'm going to finish my presentation. The organizational aspects are about the target audience, the graduation of students of this course that I just explained. We work with monitors, tutor, the professor, and the teachers, and the time was 45 hours, and the modality was about distance education. We use a lot of learning objects that we work with them. The concept of usability, how we can use the mobile device, the concept of what is a mobile device, how can I use this device in education, what is M-learning, the types, the challenge, the possibilities, the concepts, and a lot of apps, the examples, how we can create apps. We use Apple Pie in these disciplines, and the concept of these apps and how we can construct these competence. And the last one was about the methodological aspects, how we can do the evaluation of these students, about the participation, the engagement. There was a summative and formative evaluation, meetings, one meeting that was face-to-face, and all the other meetings was about distance education. We use the RODA, the technological aspect was a virtual learning environment. We used the webfolio, the forum, a log book, the library, and the app of the disciplines also. This is a future, two features about the apps that the app of the disciplines, and we have a lot of apps that the students create in our course. And about the results, we know that the pedagogic architectures building may enable teacher with condition for creation of methods, means, and procedures. A new form or organization arise for the teaching and learning process, giving support to the development of students' knowledge. Methodological and technological aspects do not just determine our techniques, procedures, and computer resource to be planned and implement in class. But it was presented a discussion about the concepts of pedagogic architecture for the distance education in order to provide opportunities for the development of this digital fluency competence of e-learning, because we motivate the students to create their own apps in our course. It was necessary to work with a plan and to implement this pedagogic architecture to assist the teachers and the future teachers and the students to develop this competence. And the elaboration of these architectures become very relevant to guide and encourage teachers who to wish to perform activities with mobile resource in distance learning resource. The conclusion, it is clear that development of the digital fluency competence focus on learning is very relevant for us, considering among the future of mobile device, one of the most used that are apps. And application can help in the organization and availability of materials according to easy of navigation, expanding the ways to access contents, activities, and information on the disciplines through the use of mobile device. This is our difference, and I think I conclude our presentation. Was one of my students. It's the master of one part of the master of my students, and I'm here to present for her. Thank you, and I open for questions.
Great. Well, thanks so much. And we have a couple questions coming in through the chat from Elizabeth Barber. The first is, have your students had to switch to mobile technologies that use hotspots? So how are students accessing learning through their phones? Are they using a mobile phone plan, or is it Wi-Fi networks? Have you had technology constraints with network access? Like, the question I think pretty much focuses on access to networks and the types of networks they're using in terms about data usage and that kind of thing.
Let me see how for students. Well, we have in the university, this is a e-learning course, and they don't have difficulty to access because they have Wi-Fi networks at home. And here in the university, they have free Wi-Fi. And then it's very easy to them. But in this course that was last year, now I'm thinking about the new courses, because here in the university, what I talk about the before is we have a lot of students that they don't have computer, and then they have to to do all the classes only with the mobile, the M with about M learning with the tablets and smartphones, and the Wi-Fi are free here in the university and in their homes, of course.
Well, that leads into, I think, Elizabeth's next question. She asked two things. The second part is almost an offshoot of this. One is what learning management system are you using? And then the second, which I think relates to this, was how is learning going now that everyone is online? So due to the pandemic, especially with a group that doesn't always have laptops, obviously that's part of what you were trying to address here, but can you talk a little bit about how learning is in Brazil? So one was, she's asked what LMS you're using, and then the second is how the state of the world in learning in Brazil at this time during the pandemic. In the online learning world.
What we are using now with this, I'm using and with my students, we use Apple Pie, and now we are using Weebly, and we use of course also the Google sites to construct apps. And what is the learning going now that everyone is online in Brazil? It's a very big problem now. In the private university, they have to return the second, third day of the pandemic, and the professor have to learn how to use the distance education in 2, 3, 4 days in 1 week. In the public university, it's everything stop, because here in Brazil we have to learn, not me because it's my area, distance education, but we have to learn all the university in 90 days what the professor are going to learn in 1 decade. You understand? And this is so difficult about the public university, because we have a lot of poor people, and we have quotes also, and they don't have anything at home. The only thing that they have are the smartphones, and it's going to be very, very difficult, maybe the next month, to begin the class, only online class, because until maybe September, October, we are not going to return in-person class. It was going to be impossible. And one of the ways are to use mobile phone and the distance education here in Brazil, of course.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And a couple more comments, as Elizabeth points out, that access to technology and the digital divide is obviously a critical issue, and dealing with learning curves with going to online. And Renee will be our next speaker, points out that this is, just a great point. There's such an urgency to learn everything, and people have days for something that was, as you said, would take years or decades, and now it's everything is done in days and months, and it's, and there's there's the challenge and the opportunity, right? And part of the interest in online is great for us. One of the downsides probably is that it feels like such a burden to some people right now. And you want people to understand this isn't all that online learning can be. This is the quick way to get something online, and this is not all that there is and all that there can be. And we need to build systems around, how to support the instructor side, as well as how to build the right experiences for the learners, so that it's, that they can all make the most of it, and we can build the kind of experiences that we want, and everyone can play the right role. So on that, it's been great having you. Time to wrap up. Patricia also did do an interview with me, so there'll be more with Patricia on, I believe, on Friday on the program, a pre-recorded bit, and I hope you'll stick around, be in the chat, and be here for the next few days. I'm sorry we couldn't bring you to New York this year, but it's great to see you as always.
Yeah, thank you a lot. Have a nice conference.
All right, next up, we have Renee Hobbs. Renee comes to us from the University of Rhode Island, where she is an internationally recognized authority on media literacy education and is the founder and chair of the Media Education Lab. And so we're very pleased to have her talking about adult learners as media makers, create to learn pedagogies in online learning. So I think we can roll Renee's introduction, and I'll turn it over to her after that.
Thanks so much for welcoming me to participate in the conference, David, and to those of you who are watching or watching the recording. Today I'm going to be talking about adult learners as media makers, and specifically about the use of create to learn pedagogies in online learning. So I'm going to share with you kind of a case study of just one course that is something I've been working on for a few years. And through the lens of looking closely at this course, I'm going to make 4 points today. I'm going to talk about how, as an expanded conceptualization of literacy becomes normative, adult learners need technical, cognitive, social, emotional, and civic competencies. You guys have been talking about that all day. I'm going to make the argument that the process of discovering digital authorship involves choice, courage, risk-taking, and vulnerability. And when educators, adult learners, engage in that process, they gain a lot of confidence in the value of their creative and their technical competencies. And that's really important for online learning. The third point I'm going to make is the idea that creating digital media in the context of a learning activity involves a balance between creative freedom and creative control. And navigating that balance from the point of view of the instructor and the point of view of the learner is a key element to the success of the learning experience. And finally, I'm going to make the argument that by establishing connections between the classroom and the culture, by explicitly making it obvious how what we're doing in the Create to Learn pedagogy relates to the culture as a whole, learners recognize the value and the relevance of the learning experience. So the work that I'm doing is been about online learning for, I guess, nearly a decade, but I don't consider myself really part of the online learning scholarly network. Instead, I'm a part of the digital and media literacy knowledge community. And we emphasize that literacies are expanding, and in the process of those literacies expanding, it makes us think in different ways about reading and writing in relation to learning. So my work is really situated in that knowledge community. And another key pedagogical value of my work is about the idea that the internet and digital culture empower people as consumers and creators, where choice, agency, and autonomy support lifelong learning. And this really is a core pedagogical value to more than 30 years work in the field of media education. So that's the ambit of the knowledge community that I bring into this practice. When we talk about digital and media literacy, we build on the work of Paola Freire to think about the spiral of learning that involves accessing, analyzing, creating, reflecting, and taking action. And that spiral of inquiry learning processes involves a whole host of new things, which is bit kind of complicated these days as everyone sees all of these different competencies. And well, if you're a librarian, you might be focusing on the curation competencies. If you're coming from the background of liberal learning, you might focus on ethical reasoning, right? If you're an English teacher, you might hone into that issue of emotional response or collaboration or dialogue. And if you're worried about disinformation and propaganda, you're honed in right there on that issue of credibility analysis. So as the scope of these competencies are widened and deepened, we think the idea of thinking through those 5 learning processes helps to unify an expanding field. So essentially the claim that as literacy gets bigger, learners have more needs is kind of exemplified by that last slide, right? That these competencies are cognitive, they're social, they're emotional, and they're civic. And educators have different levels of investment in some of these, right? Some educators are really invested in the socio-emotional competencies. Some are really invested in the cognitive competencies. Some are really invested in the civic competencies. But in so many ways, they have to be looked at as part of a unified whole, right? And so there's the tension for adult learners, how to look at the need for specific competencies while maintaining a broad understanding of how they all fit together. So I want to share with you the story of the context of this case study. I guess now it's been 6 years ago, we created the Graduate Certificate in Digital Literacy at the University of Rhode Island as a means to offer a postgraduate certificate to K-12 teachers, school, public, and academic librarians, college and university faculty, and media professionals. So 4 different kinds of adult learners to bring them sort of, the way we thought about it was to bring them into the 21st century, right? That's the way we thought of it, right? Let's bring them into the 21st century where they'll think more deeply about critically reading and writing a wide variety of texts that are available online, gain experience in composing using digital media tools and technologies, including those that bring together language, image, sound, and interactivity. Thinking about more on an epistemological level, how digital media, text, tools, and technologies reshape the nature of knowledge, how they affect personal and social relationships, how they alter organizational practices in the workplace, school, and community. You've been talking about a bit, David, with your colleagues today about that topic. We really wanted to foreground the development of people's collaborative competencies and thinking about how people could work across the sectors of K-12 education, higher education, librarianship, and media and media and journalism. We wanted to help people think across those sectors. And we really wanted people to think of themselves as change agents, as digital literacy leaders. And all of that involved cultivating habits of mind that basically make people deeply committed to being lifelong learners, not thinking of this as a one and done, but as a process they'll be engaging in for a lifetime. So this summer, we're thrilled to be able to offer the Summer Institute in Digital Literacy fully online. Until this year, the summer program had been part of the blended learning program offered for 1 week as a intensive 42-hour deep dive experience with the online courses happening in the fall and in the spring. But because of COVID pandemic, we decided to move our Summer Institute online, working in collaboration with the National Louis University in Chicago. And we'll have another great learning adventure and produce a lot of data to understand even more deeply doing professional development with 150 teachers in a week-long, fully online intensive learning experience. Stay tuned next year. But the structure of the certificate program looks something like this. You come to this Summer Institute for the first time. You take a fall graduate level course with Julie Quiro. She's one of the world's leading experts on online reading comprehension. You take a course with me called Digital Authorship, and then you come back the second summer. So over the course of that 12 months, this is a cohort of folks who are investing in building those competencies that I just described. Today, what I want to do is share with you some of the data that's coming out of the digital authorship course, right? Because I'm trying to understand more deeply the challenges and the sort of trajectories that adult learners experience as they take on the identity of being digital authors. One thing I have to say at the outset is that most of the folks who participate in our program self-identify as beginners. So here's a little piece of data here. When we ask people to describe themselves, are you a novice? Are you a beginner? Are you intermediate, advanced, or expert? As you can see, about half of them when they first come identify as novices or beginners. As they move through the program, it's really interesting. They're less likely to embrace the identity of expert. In part, that's because they understand the depth. They understand better the depth of what expertise really means, right? But they often, arrive to tier 2 still feeling very much like they are just beginners on their journey. So I thought it would be useful for me to talk to you a little bit about the course structure and design. Lots of people have asked me about this over the years, and it certainly is a unique course structure. You're looking at a screenshot of the outward-facing part of the website, and I'll just put a link to that here for you because we really embrace the idea that authorship is a public activity, and so all the work that students create for this course are published on the public website. This is we're using the tool called Notion. Notion is a really great, it's like the newest, latest, coolest kind of wiki, and we really love it. But then I also thought it would be useful for me to show you a little bit about the way in which we think about platforms and technologies in relation to the inquiry process. So I'm sharing with you, let's see if I'm actually sharing with you. I think I am sharing with you the syllabus for this course. And let's see now, how will I show it to you? Is there a way I can make that, visible? I don't know if I can actually, I can do screen sharing, can't I? Let's see if I have that option. Looks like a presentation. Would you like to take over and start sharing? Yes, I would. So I can't quite tell if you can see that. David, can you see the syllabus now? Right there. Or are you just still seeing the slides?
Let's see.
Oh, darn. Okay, so I think, I know what it is.
Things are changing.
Here. There we go.
Yep.
Now, right? Beautiful. A little learning curve, like everything. So you can download the syllabus and take a look, but I want to call out your attention to two really, I think, things that are especially important for this audience. One is what some of the values are, right? What some of the values of the course are. But the format relies on 4 foundational platforms. We use Pathwright as our learning management system, and that is our private walled garden where students engage in activities that are kind of part of the learning process. We use the Notion website space as our public-facing website where we post our creative assignments there. We also make pretty active use of Twitter, using the hashtag to participate in a larger knowledge community. And we also use Flipgrid as a form of video reflection. And so then we have asynchronous dialogues using that. But the other thing I wanted to call your attention to were these inquiry questions that guide the pedagogy of the course. You can see that there are 4 categories. We start with thinking about authors and audiences. What is digital authorship, right? What's digital identity? We then think about some of the contexts in which digital authorship occurs and some of the ethical issues around representing information and knowledge, especially in social contexts. We take a deep dive in copyright and digital learning to help us understand what it means to make transformative use of copyrighted work. And then we end by focusing on this idea of digital learning for a lifetime. So that is the sort of set of questions that really guide our program. And now I wanted to share with you a little bit about sort of the spark of curiosity that starts the course off. So to show you that, I want to show you this one, video number 1. Let's take a look.
Welcome to EDC 534, part of the Graduate Certificate in Digital Literacy. I'm Renee Hobbs,
and I'm your instructor and guide for this fully online graduate level course. In 2020, the concept of digital literacy continues to evolve and change. Educators are struggling with the question of how to prepare people for an unknowable future. We can define literacy as the sharing of meaning
through
symbols.
In daily life, we
recognize
that people
share meaning using a wide variety of creative forms.
In a participatory culture, we are
readers and writers of the world around us. This semester we'll be exploring the power of create to learn pedagogies.
I'll be inviting you
to think deeply about your own identity as a digital author. At our class website, you'll be sharing some of the creative work that you produce for this class. At our Pathright Learning Management System, we'll access the readings, the videos, and have the private discussions between the class members. Of course, we'll be exploring the power of Twitter for learning, research, and inquiry. So you can get started this week by reading the syllabus, exploring the platforms we're using this semester, and asking questions. I'm looking forward to learning with you this semester. Thanks for joining our class, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye. Idea of the way in which the course is really mostly an asynchronous learning experience. Only a couple of times during the semester do we ever meet using synchronous learning tools like Zoom. We engage in dialogue and we have conversations, but we do it at a time that is convenient to us. So I wanted to continue to talk a little bit about this idea of a really interesting phenomenon that happens every single time in this course, and that I've documented pretty nicely through a lot of different kinds of data. So as students discover their identities as digital authors, they deepen their appreciation for choice, courage, risk-taking, and vulnerability. And in confronting those complicated feelings, they gain confidence, and they gain confidence that affects both their creative and their technical competencies. And I think this is of high relevance to anybody who's working with adult learners. Unlocking people's confidence by tapping into their creative competencies and helping them discover their public voice unleashes a lot of energy that can be applied toward developing technical skills. So routinely, I ask students to describe the other kinds of authorship experiences they've had. Have they maintained a journal or a blog? Have they selected and shared images and music and content with their social media audience? Have they engaged in creative writing? Have they interviewed someone to gather information? Have they given a speech using PowerPoint? Have they performed spoken word poetry? Have they participated in an online video chat? Have they streamed a video? Have they performed in a video? Have they taken photos that they intentionally designed to be beautiful? This helps me understand the background that people bring to the enterprise. And it reminds them that we're not just talking about technical competencies, we're talking about creative competencies. Most of my adult learners place themselves on the emerging end of this spectrum. When they begin the course, many of them have not done many of these tasks. These tasks are not identified with the practice of being a librarian, or the practice of being an elementary school or secondary teacher, or the practice of being a college professor. So they often identify as novices, and the process of the prospect of being a digital author kind of scares them. So these three themes emerge consistently over the last 5 years. They're afraid of becoming a digital author because they might be misunderstood. They're afraid of becoming a digital author because the tools, they're never going to be able to master those, right? Notice the one quote, I feel like as soon as I master one, it changes. I bet there's some people in this audience who might feel that way from time to time. This overwhelms me to the point that I sometimes just opt out from even trying, right? So while that fast learning curve really works for Silicon Valley, it's a challenge for mere mortals, right? And of course, more profoundly, the fear about becoming a digital author is rooted in this fear of not being good enough, right? So this sample of writing, while it intrigues me, it also terrifies me. Am I smart enough? Am I good enough? Am I going to be relevant enough? So these fears are really important, and I have to acknowledge them as part of the learning process. Now, it's also the case that these adult learners recognize that great things could happen as they develop their digital authorship competencies. They know they could become more confident, they know they could connect with a wider audience, and they know they could learn. So balancing the fear and the potential benefits is a part of the pedagogical strategy of this course. And that means that my job is to design or scaffold students through media production projects that give them just enough structure for them to gain new confidence and skills, and just enough freedom for them to feel deeply invested. How do I do it, you might ask? Okay, well, let's talk about that. So scaffolding the Create to Learn pedagogy, this is the subject of my book called Create to Learn, published by John Wiley in 2019, really involves in thinking about these stages: accessing and analyzing, creating and collaborating, and reflecting and sharing. So during the first month of the semester, we're practicing in very small, granular ways, analyzing media, right? Learning to annotate documents using, for example, Kami for Chrome, learning how to annotate video, right? Learning to think about the relationship between learning in the classroom and learning in the real world, and exploring lots of resources that show us the power of digital learning. They then begin to create small projects at first, but then two larger projects. And I want to talk a little bit about those. You can see that my philosophy is they're doing lots of little things instead of just a few big things. And the little things are like building some strength there. And all the time, as they create, they're reflecting, right? They're reflecting on their learning, and they're sharing their learning with the world. So I've tried a lot of different kinds of Create to Learn projects over the years. I've tried screencast analysis and digital storytelling and collaborate and explain and build a website and analyze a YouTuber. And today I just wanted to show you two examples. We'll take a look at a screencast analysis, and then we'll take an example of digital storytelling. And some of you, I think, are probably familiar with the digital storytelling example, but I'm going to show you a very low-tech version of it. And I'm not sure how familiar you are with screencast analysis, so I think it's important to start with that one first. This is a core Create to Learn pedagogy of media literacy, and it looks something like this.
This project is on
Francina Simone. She's a booktuber that I learned about from an article in
this is a project where the adult learner has looked very carefully at a YouTuber. She has started to notice some patterns in the characteristic features of this person's work, and she's situated herself in relation to that YouTuber, and she's making her first YouTube video. It's really just a glorified set of, it's a slideshow, right? With a voiceover, right? So technologically, it's not very complicated, and it's not very pretty, but she does her best to communicate some of the core values that she understands as she's in this course, ideas about representation and identity. Now I wanted to show you another example. This is a more traditional kind of digital story. And the digital story is number 12. It's only 2 minutes long, but I think you're going to enjoy it. Created very, very simply with Adobe Spark.
Turn handle down and push. That's what a hand-lettered sign reads on the door of the Rhode Island State House. It's the door that everyone goes through to enter this building, even the governor. The State House is sometimes called the People's House because it belongs to all of us. But it doesn't always feel like my house. I wonder how it will feel as I visit today. I put my shoulder to the ornately carved wooden door. It always sticks, and I guess that's why some exasperated security guard, tired of getting off his chair, posted that homemade sign. My phone, car keys, water bottle, and snacks are in a canvas bag that goes on the belt to be scanned. I look around the rotunda and catch sight of a small group of women dressed in red t-shirts just like the one I'm wearing. I exhale the breath that I didn't realize I was holding. I smile, wave, and join the group, shedding my coat to reveal a bright red Moms Demand Action t-shirt. We are advocates for common sense gun laws, and we come to the Rhode Island State House often to talk to lawmakers. We try to persuade them to take action because our children and communities deserve safety. There are long nights of hearings, bullying from some Second Amendment supporters, hard benches, and slow progress toward better gun laws that is so incremental that it sometimes feels like no progress at all. But if every day kids are brave enough to go to school where they fear shootings, and women are brave enough to leave their armed abusers, then I can be brave enough to go to the People's House, turn the handle down, and push.
So here's one of these adult learners. She identifies as an anti-violence activist, and in a matter of a 2-minute video, using a powerful set of symbols, turn, handle, and push, she connects her work as an activist to the work of pushing the door open. She uses the simplest of technologies. Adobe Spark it's a set of still photos with a voiceover, but it's a very, very effective piece of communication. And of course, her confidence and her sense of agency was off the charts as a result of creating this work. And in some ways, her capacity and curiosity to want to learn accelerated because the course connected some professional goals she had for herself with some civic goals that she had for herself as an anti-violence activist. So digital storytelling and screencast analysis are scaffolds that enable beginning learners to create and learn using digital technologies, but with a format that is got enough structure that projects can be done, you know, with limited time and limited resources. So When teachers themselves get the opportunity to do this work, they start immediately seeing the connection between what happens in the classroom and what should happen in the culture. And so that's really my concluding point here. I want to show you just a couple of minutes of a very interesting project. This project was created by Julia Firar. She is an academic librarian at Virginia Tech University in Blacksburg, Virginia. A year ago or so, she was made responsible. She was officially designated the digital literacy librarian. And the provost of the university basically asked her to figure out how to bring digital literacy competencies to the whole university. And for the final project, adult learners had to create 2 work products. They had to create one creative project with a certain set of scaffolding and some limitations. And then they had to create kind of an explanation video. We called it an Ignite video in the sense that it had to be encapsulate the sort of philosophy and rationale of their project and connect it to everything they'd learned that semester. Really, really fascinating. So I'm just going to show you a couple minutes, not of the project she created, but of her explanation of the project she created. So let's take a look at that now. That is video 15. Hold on here. I think that's video 15.
As digital But instead of having these lessons spelled out, viewers get to discover along with us as questions and concerns come up naturally. They get to see our surprise, delight, and confusion, and even share it. I think that these emotional aspects are key to the reaction video genre. I find these kinds of videos appealing when the humanity of the person doing the reacting is front and center. While editing, I often prioritized vulnerability and authenticity over perfection. I made sure to leave in a lot of laughter, silly moments, and even places where I stumbled over my own words. Similarly, I considered including a lot more pop-up annotations to reinforce the lessons in the video. but decided to resist that, at least this time, in favor of a less direct and more informal instruction. If viewers don't immediately start creating portfolios or updating profile pictures, that's okay with me. I'd rather that they think about their own goals and about how they show up online. Finally, I noticed that the editing process encouraged me to make additional decisions about privacy and my own online presence. In this way, my own creative process mirrored the learning I was hoping to spark. I think this speaks to a large appeal of experimenting with teaching through YouTube genres. It encourages us to walk the walk with digital literacy in a new way and expand our own digital authorship. Digital literacy is complex. Education is complex. And really, being a person is complex. Let's keep finding ways to explore all three together.
Human response to yes, I think my mic is working now. Yeah, so Julia created a reaction video that demonstrated how to talk with someone, a patron, right? Her job as a librarian requires she interacts with patrons. She had to talk with a patron about his digital identity. And she did it in a very playful way. And this video actually introduces 6 or 7 big ideas having to do with helping people be responsible with their digital identity and understand what is out there online about them and how to protect their privacy, but in a super playful way, a way that was informed by her close look at the work of YouTubers. And so I feel like in some ways her openness to kind of think in an out of the box way about her learning objectives as an academic librarian, where her creativity was unleashed. And in taking the risk, right? Trying to make a YouTube style video, an academic librarian trying to make a YouTube style video, this is a risk, right? In taking the risk, she ramped up her competencies and she ramped up her confidence as well. So this chart that I'm showing you now is kind of like a synthesis of what my approach to online learning is like in relation to media literacy. How I use digital, free and open source digital tools to help people access, analyze, create, reflect, and take action. I feel like the superiority of these online tools is becoming more and more evident as I help adult learners discover their agency as media makers, and media makers in the service of learning. Of course, some of the data that we've been getting out of the program are really exceptional. Here you can see when we ask them to compare our program to all other professional development programs they've ever experienced in their career. 80% of them rated a 9 or a 10. We know it's a transformative learning experience. And in some ways, we continue to discover the power of create to learn pedagogies as a way to move away for real from that transmission-based model by positioning learners at the center of it all. Thanks very much. And I guess now, David, we have time for Q&A.
That was fantastic, and we do have time for Q&A. So if you want to type questions into the chat, or if you really want to ask live, we can arrange that as well. And it's in the chat. So we'll see what questions people have. I had one that actually came up when you were first talking about the fear people had if they were getting into digital authorship. One thing that was not on the list I wondered might be was, I don't know if this came up, but do people have a fear of sort of feedback that they're going to get? Like in today's digital world, you post something and it somehow ends up getting feedback. Some is great, some is horrible, some is nonsense. Was that something that came up, and how do people feel about that?
Yeah, this idea that their work could be misunderstood right? That's the theme you're talking about. The risks involved in putting something out there in the world, knowing that somebody else might hate it, somebody else might think it's superficial, trivial. Of course, since all of these are adult learners, most of them were between the ages of 30 and 50, right? They were aware that putting stuff on the open internet, putting their creative learning products on the open internet did offer a risk. And in some ways, I think the fact that they wrestled with that in their decision-making about what to create was a super evident. Often they would say things like, we keep talking to our middle school kids about don't do this, don't do that, don't do this online. He says, well, this is a better way to learn that.
Yeah, sure.
Than just standing on a soapbox and telling them what to do.
Right.
Or let them discover, let them think through what happens when your ideas are misunderstood. What happens when somebody misinterprets your work? And what are your obligations and social responsibilities as a communicator?
Right. No, absolutely. Because it's not only the feedback, it's the potential mass amount of it that you're going to get, right? Like, so I mean, some people it's hard enough to present in a class when you're younger and you're learning things like that, but then that the group is the class, so there are different social pressures of people that But here, you just don't, I mean, things reach, high levels of interaction, unexpectedly, and all of a sudden you're getting, every kind of comment for everybody.
And not all adult learners were comfortable with the required use of Twitter for my course. And that's something that many of us who teach with Twitter have wrestled with, right? Because Twitter can be a very scary place for beginners and for people who talk about topics that are controversial or relate to sensitive issues. So in the old days, I used to be kind of rigid about that because I really wanted them to discover the power of Twitter. But now I will accept a teacher who says, look, this is really way out of my comfort zone. And I want to respect that there are multiple ways to be a digital author. So I can't make Twitter required.
Right. Yeah, no, Twitter was absolutely the forefront of my thoughts when I asked that question. That's really where I feel like I see the most, the highest level of insanity, I guess, is really the best way to put it. I don't know what else to say. Did you feel that then people chose, like, were there some people who chose to intentionally be provocative because of the audience and some who chose to intentionally be not provocative, or was it kind of just a little of everything?
I think these are people who are leaders in different ways. And so that there's interesting ways in which people in their 50s, I think there's maybe some kind of developmental sequelae, right? People in their 50s, pretty confident and took more risks, which I thought was really interesting because my stereotype was these old ladies will not really feel very confident at all. They really won't be able to find their voice. They've never made anything really, they don't even write it in a journal, right? So I had stereotypes like, oh, these older learners, they will really struggle with it. But it turned out that they were pretty comfortable in their own skin. So one lovely lady made a how to bake a bang bang cake. And it was a how-to video, like a cooking video, how to make a bang bang cake, but it was really a story about love and forgiveness, right? And it was really like a lesson to her own learners that when you make mistakes, the right way to respond is with love and forgiveness. It was a very beautiful piece that used the format of a cooking video to offer a big life lesson. And I don't think I haven't seen too many younger people do that. And I think maybe at each age, there are some issues about how comfortable we feel in our own identity and being able to be out there with it.
No, that makes sense. And I see a comment from Elizabeth Barwood said she had high school students who were uncomfortable with LinkedIn assignments. So it really sort of depends on who you are and what you're comfortable with. And there's, maybe hard to draw generalizations, but it does feel like there are, Twitter certainly does come up as one where there's just sort of it seems like a higher likelihood if it gets visible that it's just, there's going to be some sort of piling on and you're going to end up dealing with a million comments back and forth. So
yeah, I think one of the reasons why a video turns out to be such a useful tool in that regard is that a high school student will understand a video assignment in relation to her experience watching YouTube videos. Right. And a college librarian will see her use of video in relation to the ambit of experiences she's had using YouTube. So it's video is a medium that offers a wide array of ways to put yourself out there in relation to your personal and professional identity. And I think some other platforms kind of force people to take on roles that they might not feel really comfortable with. Like I think high school students with LinkedIn. How comfortable can a high school student be representing themselves on a professional platform? I'm not sure. Whereas these students really did feel like, some of them felt like, I am not a YouTuber and this is not a comfortable world for me. But over the course of posting 2 or 3 YouTube videos, they began to see that it's a very flexible community with a lot of diverse authors.
No, that makes sense. And did you have a sense? Do you have a sense of, once people have sort of broken the barrier, they create something, they make it through the risks and they get it out there? Do you have a sense of like what percentage of people really embrace it and start to do more and more and more and do this, versus people who did it once and felt like, God, that was really great, I enjoyed it, but I don't know if I'm going to do it again?
Yeah, I am actually really interested in that as a research question, David. So it's so interesting that you bring that up, because we've now had about 800 people through the program in the last 6 years, and we just have not had the staffing or the capacity to do a kind of retrospective of that whole group. And I guess based on my, I try to keep up with my former students. My guess would be probably only about 30% continue with it. It goes back to the slide that your colleague in a previous session talked about. You can master the skills, but then will you transfer them to your new environment? Well, that depends on a lot of factors. And I think maybe 30% seem to have found a way to make that transfer into their professional life after the program is completed.
Okay. Interesting. It'll be interesting to see if that changes over time as self-created media becomes, I mean, it's not that it isn't widely accepted now, but there's still are generations where that wasn't how you grew up, right? I mean, that wasn't how I grew up. You didn't grow up creating videos. I remember when we got to create videos when I was a kid, we got to create these stop action videos with this camera that was a cable release, and you would put blocks together and you'd move the blocks and you'd click again and put together school. But that was like a really high-end school project that you were really lucky to do. That wasn't something that everybody could do with their phone. And so it's a different society too.
It's making me feel really happy you had a media literacy experience in your childhood. This is awesome.
I had a very good school. It's actually part of my next talk after yours. But I had a very good school, and we had opportunities that were really, really lucky. It was project-based. We had just a set of teachers who were focused on putting you in creative situations. But it was a very rare experience, and I don't think that that's what most people got at that time, certainly. But now it seems different. Like I have 2 young nieces who are 12 and 14 now. I mean, they've been putting together beautiful PowerPoints for like years now, right? Like
since they were 8 years old.
Yeah, I mean, they've grown up in a very different way, than we did. And you think that maybe over time people grow up with video as being, almost just an everyday part of the world that you create, not something you just watch on TV, but something that you can create. And you might see that 30% then, I would think, go up over time.
Yeah, one of the most fascinating simple outcomes that happens usually within the first 3 weeks is especially those educators who are working in K-12 or in higher education, they immediately start to realize, oh, so some of the student work products that they thought were so all that were just created with a template, very simply. And their whole sense of like and they were fooled before that, right? They were like, oh, this is so magnificent, because they were looking at the features of the format. And once they start to use some of those tools themselves and they realize, oh, that's the template doing all the work, right? Then their ideas about assessing student learning just completely change. And I feel like that's a place where if we're going to move to real project-based learning in the context of online learning, then we've got to get a lot crisper about issues of assessment and help teachers understand how to assess the creative processes at work, not just the product itself.
Right. No, absolutely. And is that something you've been able to think about a little bit? How you, I mean, you have experience in the field, so you can analyze that, of course, better than somebody less experienced could. But are there things you can suggest to people who want to get into this a little bit and start asking more of the students how they can better evaluate if they're, they don't have the background that you have?
Yeah, our team at the Media Education Lab has tried 8 ways to Sunday to evaluate student videos for evidence of learning. And anybody who thinks they can do that, I want you to be suspicious of, David.
Yeah.
Because it's really hard. You cannot evaluate the quality of the learning from the product itself. But when you have the product and you have some reflective writing and you have the architecture of the process, so you can see a draft, you can see a meeting, you've got artifacts that show the process as a whole, which happens in the online space better than in the face-to-face space, because students there's a trail for everything.
Right.
When you take all that data together, I think someday we will be able to metric out quality. But right now, I feel like it's all in the process. I happened to show you 2 or 3 really nice videos, right? But I had less nice videos where the students learned just as much.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh no, absolutely. And it depends, and it's unfair to evaluate people solely on certain skills they might have and not others, right? Like I teach a class at Columbia on e-learning design, and what they do as the class project is design first a proposal with some sample screens, and then take it one level deeper, some kind of online learning product that would help an organization improve performance. Okay, so it's really pretty much that general. Pick what you're interested in, pick content that design something that it might be a course, it might be just-in-time performance mode, it might be a little of each, it might be mobile, it might be anything. Do what you find interesting. But it is always a challenge for me when I'm looking at those products, because some of them look like they are done professionally, and some of these students simply just have those skills, right? I mean, some people just have those skills, and it's always a challenge to evaluate fairly. Some I'll see things that are just wireframes. They only have to draw wireframes. That's all I ask, right? We do this internally at my company. We draw wireframes before they go to a client, right? And so, but I can look at those, and I can look at those. It's always still, it's like, wow, this is really a great structure. But it's just wireframes. Somebody else is doing something that you have to see beyond the surface, and I can do that with my background, and also with my background coming from years of doing these kinds of wireframes. But it is always it always catches you, and you're sort of struck by, like, this looks like this looks like this is done by professionals. And sometimes it's that they have the skills, and as you point out, sometimes it's that people start with something that they downloaded. So sometimes then you kind of realize, or someone leaves some content in that wasn't really like, well, wait a minute, what's the part of your course that talks about that? And then you realize that their screens actually came from a template and they hadn't changed all the text. So there are ways, but that's not what I'm looking for. What you're looking for is trying to look for the true value, look for the thinking behind it, look for what kind of product it could be as much as what it is, and at least in my situation.
Yeah, it's partly why I put such a big emphasis on copyright and fair use and transformative use, because the course gives a very clear message. Remix is powerful, and build on the shoulders of giants. That's what creating new knowledge involves. But be aware of what value are you adding, right? And make sure you're thinking about your own rights as a creator as well as a consumer of media. And I think some of those lessons continue on even if they choose not to participate in being a media creator when the course is over.
Yeah, no, I would think so. And I would think it would also just help them fully appreciate and understand the value of creation and the difficulty of the creative process, right? Like, I mean, it's, no matter how successful anybody is at I don't think I've ever met anyone who's successful at creating anything who thought it was easy. Right. It's not once.
Yeah. There's a really great quote from one of the founders of the media education movement in England. Her name was Carrie Bazalgette, and she was the head of education for the British Film Institute for many, many years. And she used to say that when people learned to critically analyze and create media, it made them have higher expectations of all media. And so I think that's a really important idea for thinking about the kind of potential long-term impact of this work and the way in which we don't want to draw the picture of what the outcomes are for this too narrowly. Because if it's true that your expectations for all media might be transformed by having the experience of being a media creator, that's actually good for the whole society, right?
Yes, absolutely.
That transcends an individual learning outcome.
Yes, yeah, no question. No, it's good for society, and it's good for society for people to understand, how complex the processes are, and for people to be able to look beyond the surface. And that's another critical thing, right? Like it's so, it's so easy to be swayed by the surface, and that's important, the surfaces, but it's not all there is. And you really want to be able to look beyond it and understand what the, as we were saying before, what the true value is. And that helps you with anything, right? That helps you in critically thinking and reviewing, about and reviewing anything that you see, particularly in the media, and particularly today, where you see things with high-end production values that are, not useful. You see high-end production value things that are dangerous, and we see all of these things.
Right. Yeah, exactly right.
So fantastic. And then a couple comments before we wrap up. Elizabeth Barber has commented that the digital learners, the younger generation, are adaptable to technology because they've grown up with it, and also because technology has improved, which I think we'd absolutely agree with. I mean, you simply just couldn't do these things even had you grown up with it. The tools weren't there for you to produce it yourself.
Yeah, I've been actually really fascinated by that because I teach both at the graduate level and at the undergraduate level. And although it is really true that the younger generation has grown up with these tools, what is fascinating to me, so I've got old ladies who are 40 and 50 years old, mid-career professionals, right? Adult learners. And then I have like 19 and 20-year-olds, right? And what I think is really interesting is that the culture of social media has created for most of the undergraduate students today this hyper vigilance about representation and representation of the self, right, and identity. They're so fearful, locked in to a bunch of stereotypes about how they should look, how they should talk, how they should act, that they face much more hurdles in trying to represent themselves through media than older people. And I think that's kind of ironic because, like Elizabeth says, these are people who've grown up with this media. Then so what are they, why are the issues of representation so narrowing their sense of what's possible for themselves as communicators? So that I'm struggling with. I have not written a paper about that because I don't understand it well enough, and I'm troubled by it.
Yeah, no, I would think part of it might be, just a guess would be, part of it might be the permanence of things, right? So you write, I grew up, you write a paper for school, and the teacher reads it, and a couple people read it if you choose to share it with them, and maybe that's it, and then it goes away. It's not part, it's not in your permanent HR file, right? And everything now kind of is, and that's a different level of pressure than. Than maybe we had with before everything was so public. And that, I think, might be connected, the ability to create media is sort of connected to the public nature of everything, and the inability to sort of, hide anything. Once it's out there, it's out there. And you say something silly, when you're 18 online, and, you're 28, and it's still going to be there.
Yeah, it's true.
So. Well, good. Well, I think time to wrap up, and it's been great having you. So I hope you stick around for the rest of the conference. Thank you so much for your presentation. It's been great talking with you. So Renee, thanks again.
I really enjoyed it. Talk to you again. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Okay. All right. So we've got one small talk left for me. I'm going to speak a little bit before we wrap up for the day about learning experience design. And it's kind of been an underlying theme through a lot of the things that we've covered in the conference so far. We, everything from the Ray and Jane story to a lot of the presentations has really been about learning experience design. How do we do the best that we can? How do we create the best experiences for people? And what does that really, really mean? And how do we use technology to help us in that endeavor and to humanize the experiences that people have rather than to dehumanize them? That's always a challenge when it comes to technology. So I think that's probably the key at this point for me. And I'm going to talk a little bit about learning experience design. So I'm going to go ahead and get started and get the slides up. All right. So first I want to start with a story. started to talk with Renee just now about my childhood education a little bit. And this is the same school where like we learned how to use a fancy camera and build animations at a really young age. And this is my school. I can tell you what it is. It's called Green Acre School. It's in the DC area. It's in Rockville, Maryland. And it's where I went to elementary school. And it was a very defining experience for me, which is why I'm talking about it all these years later. But as a wonderful educational experience, the school was and still is a progressive education school. It's very project-based. It embodies really the themes and the concepts that we've been talking about throughout this conference and continue to do so. And one story that sticks with me is from 5th grade, so around 10 years old. And one of the projects we were asked to do, we were in a unit where we're learning about state governments. Okay, so in a traditional class, you might learn about state governments by, reading about them and taking a test on, what the different roles are and what the different divisions are and, what a governor is and all that kind of thing. That is not at all what we did. What we did was we were asked to pick a state, choose a state, any state you like, and create a scrapbook that explains sort of the key features of the state government. And it was really that open-ended. And I chose the state of Pennsylvania. I was actually born in the state of Pennsylvania. Lived there for 1 year. My father was doing his PhD and finished up after 1 year. So that was really my entire knowledge of Pennsylvania was that, very little, 1 year of, not being all that aware of all that much stuff. So I was curious about it. It was the state of my birth. I didn't know, get to pick a state. So already I was interested. There was a level there. I was like, I'm learning about a state that mattered to me. So what we did, we then asked to put together a scrapbook, and the process involved doing all sorts of things, calling, writing letters, trying to get the states to send you things, also library research at the time was before Google, all these kinds of things. You would find whatever you could find. And every student in the class was assigned, a state, or was asked to pick a state. Nobody was assigned a state, but everyone got to pick a state, and you had your own states. You're working independently, but we worked very collaboratively too, because you would often talk with your friends about what they were doing. Oh, I wrote a letter to the Chamber of Commerce. Oh, there's a Chamber of Commerce. So I didn't know that. Let me try that for my state. And so you would share ideas, and it was a very non-competitive environment. The school was structured that way. The culture of the school was very much one that fostered creativity and non-competitive work. And so we worked together on that. And then the teacher played the role really of a coach. I mean, it was really like having an advisor more than a teacher. So you would meet with the teacher specifically. You'd meet as a class. You also meet individually, and she would help you through she'd ask what you were doing. You would update her. She would make suggestions depending on where you were going and what she thought. And it was very much a coaching relationship, and you very much did look up to her and her expertise, and she knew a lot more than we did, both about state governments and how to get information. But she wasn't trying to tell you what to do all the time. She would look for your ideas and kind of gave you some ideas when you needed it, and sent you out in the wild to go see what you could do. And that's one of the greatest experiences that I've ever had. And so we produced these scrapbooks that looked something like this. I looked long and hard. Last time I was at my parents' house in the garage for the actual scrapbook. I'm convinced it still exists. My parents keep things. It's got to still be there, but I did not find it. It looked roughly like this: the state seal and the state coin and the state bird, and a lot of information about the governmental agencies and all of that. So to sum up a little bit about the logistics, we had 1 teacher and 15 students, roughly. We did have budget, so we had to pay for stamps. We had to pay for long distance phone calls. That was the thing back then. That was fine. So we did not really have budget limitations. And we were, as I mentioned, very encouraged to talk with each other about the project. And it was the nature of the school anyway. It was the culture. It was a natural thing for people to do. So what were some key elements of the experience? Well, there was learn by doing, right? We learned by, we weren't learning to be the governor. We didn't get to do that. But we learned certainly by doing things. We were very active and very much in a constructive way. We're building something. So this was a create to learn, in the pre-YouTube days, right? We were creating something as part of the learning experience, and as really the core of the learning experience. Everything was around the goals of creating things. And one side effect of that was that you got very emotionally involved in the project, and that was of tremendous value. We had one-on-one coaching and mentoring. So this is an element that we can bring into things today, right? So we had, as I mentioned, we had the teacher who was working with you as a mentor, not talking at you and telling you what to do and asking you to memorize things, but working with you on a project that had meaning to you and meaning to her. A lot of collaboration with other students. We worked together in lots of ways. We shared ideas. We, gave each other, our experiences. And then, as I couldn't help mentioning earlier, there was a really strong emotional connection to the project. And that started with the idea that you got to pick your own state. Right? So from the beginning, you're not even told, you get to pick something that has meaning to you. There are 50 states in the US. Some have personal meaning to each person more than others. And I chose one that had personal meaning to me. And then everything about the structure of the experience was very, very much one that you connected with emotionally. You got a lot of say in things and how they went. It was very creative. You would end with a product. You could, work on things kind of in your own way and in your own style. And all of that played into the emotional connections, I think, that I and others had with that project. So if we look back, it's not something we get in most learning settings. So you look back to early education and training, and in the early days, it was about apprenticeships, right? And that was one of the early education models. You would work with an expert. You would learn to be a craftsman. You learn to be a blacksmith. You'd work with an expert. You might start by tending the fires, and then you move up to getting to, hold the iron while the blacksmith did the work. Then you'd get to maybe do a little bit of work on something that you couldn't screw up too badly. Then eventually you'd get to the point where you could become an expert yourself as time went on. And that was a great model in a lot of ways. It was all of these things that we just said. It was learned by doing. It was, there was coaching and mentoring. You might have an emotional connection. You're creating something. Again, you'd learn by practicing. So I'll walk through some of the advantages. Okay, we had a coach. We had an experienced mentor. Also, getting back to a point that Larry and some others made earlier, apprenticeships were not just a one-time event. So you would continue to work with and consult with the master, the expert. Right? So you didn't just take a course on crafts and then go away. You were practicing on a daily basis, and you were practicing with expert guidance on a daily basis. So we lost apprenticeships because they didn't scale up well. I mean, it's not that they don't exist now, but that was sort of replaced by mass learning. And so if we look back at the evolution of education, these are just sort of selected moments that have stood out to me. Not that I was here for all of these in 1250 BC. The apprenticeships were when supposedly were the first apprenticeships. It might have been at a different time. In the 1800s, we saw mass education. And when we saw classrooms, you needed a way for things to scale up. And all of a sudden we had the need to train and teach a lot more people than ever before in a different way. You don't have enough experts to do that. Apprenticeships couldn't scale up, and you need to teach people a broader variety of things. So things had to scale up in terms of content. They had to scale up in terms of coaches, instructors, whatever the role was. You end up kind of with the classroom model that still continues today in a lot of ways. If we jump ahead to the 1980s, we saw computer-based training, and a lot of the early computer-based training was based on classroom learning. We still see too much of that today. You see too much memorizing, too much testing, page turning, read, watch, and test, and that just doesn't really give you the experience that that's going to really buy you all that much. One thing I was involved in the late 80s, early 1990s, learning by doing simulations, so I put them here. I did my PhD at a research lab in Northwestern called the Institute for Learning Sciences, which was started by a guy named Roger Schank, whose name still floats around. Yale at the time, who came to Northwestern University to start a lab based on AI in education, where we brought together cognitive psychology, education, and computer science, and particularly AI techniques all under one roof. And a lot of the work that we did there was unlearned by doing simulations. A lot of my own work was as well. And this was a very effective model. You take a lot of what we've talked about, the experience and the emotional connection, and the learn by doing, and the coaching, mentoring in some form. Maybe it wasn't a person, but you kind of had a coaching component that was more individualized, and you had all of that. And that's just been a model that's taken longer than I thought it would to take hold as strongly as it might. It's not as expensive as it used to be, but relative to page turning, it's harder to produce and takes more thought to produce. But it's well worth it. And we always see when we're able to measure anything, we can't always measure ROI as much as we would like, as I talked about with Tim. But when you do get to measure, we've seen some really good results, and it's very different than what you see, from a page turning memorization task. Well, the web-based training in the early 1990s, it seemed to me to take the wind out of the sails of some of the simulation work in some ways, because all of a sudden you had access through the web, you had intranets, and that was a great thing that you could have. You weren't sending out CD-ROMs and, asking people to put things on hard drives. But what you saw was often more limited. What you could do quickly and easily was often more limited, and a lot of people producing product were producing things that were not really founded on educational principles. And we saw a lot of the snake oil salesman that Ryan Baker referred to this morning come along. So it's taken some time, I think, to get us to a better point, and we're still getting there. Another big point was MOOCs, which have their pros and their cons, in my opinion. The massive open part is certainly great, and there are some absolutely fantastic MOOCs run by great instructors. As a model, it has a mix of sort of sometimes being too passive, and we see people drop out. Sometimes because they simply didn't need everything, which is totally fine, and sometimes because the courses aren't that interesting. So there's again a balance of what, at least in my view, what we want and what we don't in a learning experience. Which kind of brings us to today, where I put a question mark here on the slide because there's simply so much that we can keep doing. I've only mentioned some things. I've left out some of my own work and that of, I think, many of the people at this conference. We cannot fit it all in. But as far as what's mainstream is still too much of the simpler kind of learning, not enough deep learning experiences that people really connect with, that put them in positions to learn by doing and to acquire skills and focus on all the right things. And to me right now is the opportunity more than ever, particularly in the times where everybody is all of a sudden online, doing remote learning, where there's such tremendous interest in what we can do, that we can take advantage of that as a field to really publicize a lot of the great ideas and a lot of the great experiences that we can produce. Couple of goals. What we want in a great learning experience, one is to scale up to serve a large audience, also to scale up to serve a geographically diverse audience. So people are everywhere, and that's one of the great things about technology. And hopefully we can also do it right. Like, so you build a great AI infused personalized experience, and you build that for one person, you may as well build it for 1 million or 10 million or 100 million anywhere in the world that has access. And that's the goal. The goal to me is to build those really fantastic experiences that are personalized and scale up and that are very human. And that's where technology can really do more than it has. And we've seen examples in this conference, we've seen examples elsewhere in the world, but it's not enough yet. It's not really what you see everywhere. And that brings up the third point, which is do so in a way that's affordable. And that's what we have to be careful about, that it's great to do some of these things, and even some of the things that I've been involved in are still only available to those who can afford them, and to look at ways that we can use technology to make great learning experiences affordable and available to anyone. And the final point, doing all of these things while providing high quality, enjoyable, humanizing, personalized learning experiences. So they all kind of go together. And that's a lot of the set of goals that I see for great learning experiences. And new technologies to me, along with the research in cognitive science and education, in design, technology, and others, can help us do this. And that to me is a goal that I think we all have at this conference, and we have an opportunity to really kind of take another big step in changing the way that we reimagine education and training and what it really means to do that. You saw a little bit in the opener this morning of this this AI example of someone going to ancient Greece. I'll show this a little bit more tomorrow. We'll talk a little bit more in depth about this example. Here's another AI example in the workplace with a woman customer who's being served by somebody who has an AI coach available to her. So a few different things there. I'm going to show that demo as well during one of my talks tomorrow. So a summary for learning experience design principles, follow active learning, follow situated learning. These are principles that we've kind of covered throughout the day a little bit. Experiences should be immersive, relevant, personalized, resulting in the learner being connected to the experience. And then technology, again, can do a lot of things if we employ it in the right ways to create the right experiences. And everything we build with technology is scalable. And that's the key to reaching a wide audience and putting people in position to have a different kind of educational experience than they've often been able to receive. That's going to wrap up for me for this talk. I did want to note, I want to show a few demos of some good learning experiences that just kind of trigger what we can do today, in addition to some of the things I've talked about, what we can do in the future. That's on the docket for tomorrow, so I look forward to seeing all of you then. So that's going to wrap it up for the day. So thanks once again for spending the day with us. Hope you enjoyed everything, and I will see you tomorrow. Thanks again.